bad these days as a practical matter. But on the topic of the equities, as I look at it here, the 10-year also, they're buying 10-years too, right? They're not just buying equities.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of obviously there's a lot of moving parts, and we did have sort of a record jobless claims number earlier this morning.
Yeah, there was that.
Which might inform some of the fixed income decisions.
Yeah. So, what happened to the buy the rumor, sell the fact? Because earlier today, I must say, I heard people on the air saying, you know what, the markets are pretty queasy right now because they're selling the fact, but it doesn't seem to be the case when you talk about the $2 trillion package.
Yeah. Again, I think some of the numbers that have been thrown out for the size of the explodes for this rebalancing stuff are so large.
Really?
That I saw one number, $300 billion of stocks to buy over the last week of the month.
So it's really a technical thing in that sense. It's rebalancing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
That's what's going on.
Exactly right.
But tell me something else, because you're such an expert on this. Are the markets working right now in this sense? If the equity markets are supposed to be some sort of prediction of future earnings, the corporations themselves are saying, we have no clue. So what are people trading on?
Well, I think that largely explains the magnitude of the volatility that we've seen.
Yeah.
Because what we know two things is that the center of the expected distribution of earnings for this year has shifted lower to what it was before the COVID crisis, and it's shifted broader in terms of uncertainty has increased. Now, but that, I think, is essentially what the stock market's done, right?
Yeah.
It's shifted lower, and the magnitude has shifted more.
And the swings are wild. The swings are wild. Okay, thank you so much, Cameron, for joining us today. It's Bloomberg's Cameron Kreis. Coming up here, we're going to talk with Karen Harris of Bain, who's been tracking the macro trends emerging from the crisis and has come up with some interesting, maybe even surprising results about how people feel about what's going on out there. That's coming up on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are up as investors speculate the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass in Congress will lessen the pandemic's toll on the economy. The Dow is up 1,195 points, or 5%. S&P 500 and NASDAQ up over 4%. Meanwhile, state unemployment offices nationwide received 3.3 million applications for jobless benefits last week. The previous record, set in 1982, was around 700,000. Jobless claims rose in all 50 states. Deutsche Bank says the report leaves no doubt that the U.S. is in recession. And Ford Motor Company wants to make cars again. It's aiming to restart production at some of its U.S. plants as early as next month. But the United Auto Workers Union says it has great concerns about that plan. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information sooner?
What does this tell us about the state of deal making?
Let's fix that.
One unprofitable company plus another doesn't make a profitable company.
Carol Mazur.
Talk to us about real-world applications.
Jason Kelly.
Remind us what the potential is for everyday folk.
Bloomberg Business Week.
Vice President of Exploratory Science is one of the cooler titles.
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, we know the economic numbers will be both dire and lagging, but what do we know about how people are reacting to the crisis? We talk with Bain & Company's Karen Harris. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. And here's what's going on, David Weston. S&P up now by 118 points. That's a gain of 4.8%. The Dow up 1,111 points, up 5.3%. And NASDAQ is up 293 points, up by 4%. The 10-year now up 21 seconds with the yield 0.80%. Stocks are rallying as investors speculate that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. S&P 500 index on track for its first 3-day rally since February. Health stocks and utilities leading the way. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has climbed 20% above its March 23rd trough. Again, the Dow now up by 1,125 points. Global oil demand is in free fall, that according to Fateh Birol. Crude oil today falling again. West Texas Intermediate crude plunging by 4.6%. That is a drop now of $1.14 a barrel, $23.33 for a barrel of WTI. Well, today's economic data are also very important in terms of the surge in jobless claims. Bloomberg Economics says the coronavirus has triggered a global recession, and for proof, look for no further than the nearest bus stop. With that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Bloomberg's economists pour over reams of data. Here's something that stands out about the pandemic's impact. The number of people using public transit, a proxy for economic activity, has collapsed. Data from Move It, which tracks transit worldwide, shows countries that went into lockdown first have seen passenger volume fall furthest, with Italy down nearly 90%. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
And again, gold up 0.9% right now, $16.31 the ounce. Recapping, stocks higher at or near the best level, with the S&P up 120 points, up by 4.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. Once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. We are told that people over 60 are particularly vulnerable to the coronavirus, but the young, for that matter, are not immune, and that the economy is looking really bad. That's what we're told, but what are people hearing? Are they really listening to what's being said, and how are they reacting? Welcome now, Karen Harris, Managing Director for Macro Trends at Bain & Company. So, Karen, thank you so much for joining us. You follow these things, and you have some numbers about how people are reacting. Tell us what you found.
Thanks, David. Yes, in our Bain Consumer Health Indicator, which we launched in conjunction with Dynata, we've been tracking consumer health for 2 years, and of course, over the last month, have been looking closely at the impact of the coronavirus epidemic or pandemic. Based on the data that we're seeing real time, the virus is having a split reaction, interestingly, on financial health, on employment. It's having a very large impact. But on concerns about health, there's actually a big divide to the point you just made. So on the employment side, we're seeing 6% are actually seeing more employment, or their hours increased, and a little over a third aren't seeing any changes, but almost 60% have been negatively impacted either through fewer hours, reduced pay, or being laid off, or closing their business. And of this, that is hitting the middle-income households the hardest. So of the 18% that we overall reported being laid off, in middle income it was 27%. On the other hand, the health concerns are most impacting 30 to 44-year-olds. They're the most concerned. even though they're amongst the relatively least likely to be impacted. And the very old and very young are the least concerned. The younger group is slightly more concerned than the 65 plus, but 65 plus, in terms of their health concerns, have gone from only 6% 3 weeks ago to 22% today, being very concerned. And of course, they're the group that's most at risk. And so you see this interesting divide where seniors are being heavily impacted financially. They are the ones who have the highest percentage of reduced hours and income reduced, but they're the least concerned health-wise while they are the most at risk.
It's fascinating. Just listening to you, that sounds like we're putting an awful lot of stress on the middle of the country. I don't mean that geographically necessarily, but middle in terms of middle income and middle in terms of demographics. Not the really young, not the real old, but the people who are feeling the stress the most and you said 60%, I think you said, didn't you, are really feeling it in their employment among the middle income.
Well, it's 60% overall, but the middle income are actually the ones being hit the hardest. So if we look specifically at that middle income, and that's about $50,000 to $100,000 a year for household income, the impact, their hours reduced or being laid off, they're the largest percent of the laid off population. They're closing their businesses and their hours are being reduced. Again, all in the greatest number, and that is, as you say, they are the backbone, and they are also, and combine that with the group of people in the family raising bracket, and you do end up with a lot of stress on that group.
What do you make of these numbers? I mean, these are fascinating numbers to hear, but where does it lead you, or what should we be thinking about as we make decisions going forward?
Well, from a policy standpoint, in New York, as you are, we're effectively on lockdown. It is concerning to hear that the group that's supposed to be protected by this public policy is the group that's the least concerned about it. That, along with the very young, who are also getting frustrated and actually are now less concerned than they were a week ago. Or very concerned for their health, 44% last week versus 33% this week. Now, that may be an accurate reflection of their risk, but it is pointless to have this incredibly economically damaging policy for the purpose of preserving public health if the group for whom it is most important is skeptical of the policy, and younger people are also skeptical of the policy. So it does point to some potential lags in behavior that might end up being very costly and having to extend some of those measures.
Karen, how often do you update this trend study as a practical matter? And I wonder whether there's any geographic disparity that may develop. For example, I wonder if people over 60 in New York, for example, or New York City in particular, might index very, very differently from somebody in Des Moines.
Yeah, David, it's a great question. We index this weekly. We watch the data daily, but daily trends are not as helpful as really pulling up weekly and taking a look at how things have moved. We haven't been able to look geographically, but I would imagine that that's correct, that people who are living in places where the pandemic is reaching more of a peak in terms of its infection rate are likely to be far more concerned than those for whom it still feels far away.
At the same time, it strikes me it would be very valuable to our leaders, particularly our political leaders. When you look at Governor Andrew Cuomo giving a daily news conference, or the President of the United States, other governors and mayors, in really making sure the message is getting out there, because it sounds like as much as they talk about it, some people aren't getting the message.
I think that's right. I mean, we are investing as a nation behind a humanitarian crisis in a really strong way, in terms of the measures that we've taken on the economy, but fiscal, the monetary, the policy, the package that Congress is putting through and trying to put a backbone behind our businesses. And so as individuals, we all have to play our part in making those policies effective.
Well, this is a fascinating study. I hope you'll come back from time to time and update us, particularly as there are changes as these things evolve, because, as I say, we know what we're saying, but we're not always sure what people are hearing. Thank you so much to Karen Harris. She's of Bain & Company. Coming up, we're going to get a read on the coronavirus from an expert, Dr. Pauline Rosenau. She really knows public health, and we'll talk about some of the issues about social distancing, whether we're making progress. Are we bending the curve at all? Can we tell? That's going to be coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
If you promise to cover...
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we're taking a deep look at the way the coronavirus pandemic has rippled through every aspect of our lives, seemingly in a matter of days and weeks. Whether you're working from home, not working, or have to go to work, COVID-19 has changed everything. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. The lockdown continues here in New York and increasingly across the country. The numbers of those with the virus and those hospitalized continue to skyrocket. And so that raises the question, are we really making progress? We welcome now Dr. Pauline Rosenow. She is Professor Emeritus, University of Texas Health Science Center, School of Public Health. So Dr. Rosenow, great to talk to you again. It's been a couple of weeks since you and I have talked. Are we making progress in fighting this virus? We see the numbers go up, but we expected that. Dr. Rosenow? Sorry.
Yes, you're right, David. That's exactly what's going on. We're seeing different patterns in different parts of the country. That was expected, and I think that by paying attention to the scientists and the experts who have the data, we're doing the very best we can. And of course, it's inconvenient, but we're making adaptations. Schools are teaching, and teachers have got their courses together. Students are following as best they can online, and it's a very real possibility that the school year will not have to be extended because the students are turning in their assignments and they're getting the assignments from their schools on a day-to-day basis. They're working from home, as are their parents, and their parents are also going to be finding that they can get a lot done if they cooperate and if they work together. And this is a terrific opportunity to see exactly how well we can do as a community.
Is there a way for public health officials, for decision makers, to monitor compliance with the restrictions? I mean, we hear Governor Cuomo here in New York almost daily say, I drove past a park and I saw kids out there playing basketball. Stop the basketball. No more basketball. That's anecdotal. Is there a way to really monitor compliance? Because I take it people complying is critically important with making progress here.
That's true. But compliance in a situation like this is very difficult to enforce. You can't go and send the police force out to talk to every teenager who's coughing on vegetables. What we have to have is a community effort, people self-complying, but also helping others to with gentle reminders that this is not in the interest of everybody. Please back up and stay 6 feet away or 4 feet away. But do your best to be, as a community, working together and making the point to all those around you that this is important. We'll all be back to work and back to school quicker if we do it as our experts and our scientists tell us on the basis of the evidence we have and what we have learned from all the other countries that are ahead of us on this.
Dr. Rosenow, there are so many ways I suspect that this is really unprecedented. We haven't seen certainly this virus before, but this sort of phenomenon globally before either. Are there instances where we could learn from how long people are willing to stay isolated? Because it strikes me, for many of us, we're like a week into it now. It's going to get pretty old, 3 weeks, 5 weeks. If it goes beyond that, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. And compliance might become that much more difficult.
You're right on that one. And what we count on then is responsible and accountable leadership at the federal level, the state level, the local level. I think that we're getting some misinformation from the federal level, but I see a much better kind of leadership from the state level, the governors, especially those that we see on TV and that some of those that you've interviewed. I think that there's a possibility that we can continue to see that kind of leadership encouraging us on a day-to-day basis. And with that kind of leadership, we are likely to make it, whether it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And the other thing is we're going to be surprised at how well we're doing. When I see how my own family has adjusted to school every day, set up a schedule, starting at 9 o'clock, and the teachers are emailing the parents, and the kids are getting all ready and geared up to take those assignments and work on them at home. It's the best we can do, and I think we're doing a good job, and I think we're going to continue to, even though it gets old, we'll find that it's a better option than to prematurely send everybody back, and then we do not have any clue as to how bad it can get.
Well, what about that? You referred to the federal government at one point, and we have had the president, not yesterday, the day before, a few days ago, saying he'd really like to try to start easing the restrictions by Easter time. Is that plausible from your point of view, from what you understand about this virus?
It would be wonderful if we could, but from what I hear and from what I know from the experts and from the scientists, it's unrealistic. And so I would leave you to conclude as you like, but I think we have to listen to the people who have the evidence and do as they say, and perhaps ignore anything that's not evidence-based. And while we'd all like to be back tomorrow morning, if it's impossible and if this danger is greater than the benefits, let's not do it.
So, Dr. Rosenau, spend a moment on the other side of the equation, if I can put it that way. What kind of stresses and strains are we putting on our healthcare system? And here in New York, we're hearing some, I would say, horrifying stories about what the plight of some doctors and some nurses in the hospital and what's going on there. And we had Andrew Cuomo today in his news conference say we have some people who've been on ventilators now for 30 days on a ventilator. I know enough about medicine to know that's not good.
You're right. It's not good. And unless you really have the specifics of one case, it's hard to conclude that that's not the best approach. Without knowing the details, I can't make a call on that.
Well, but even apart from whether it's the best approach, if you have people who are on ventilators for 30 days, that's using up a ventilator. And as we have more and more people who need ventilators, that means you're going to have more and more ventilators.
Yeah, and it's called rationing, and we've had situations where we've had to do that in the past. And it's not easy, but again, we've got to put the decision in the hands of those who are in a position to know the specifics and make those decisions. I would say let's let the medical professionals make the call, and that's the best that I can say. That's what I would want to happen if it were me on that ventilator.
And let the medical professionals make the call. It sounds absolutely, completely right. At the same time, what do we need to do that we may not be doing, or maybe we're doing all we can to supply those medical professionals with the equipment they need to protect themselves?
Very true. And I think that if we look at the money, it's all about the money. And it's all about the decisions of asking factories and to start making more of those ventilators and more of those masks and more of those gowns. We need a way to recycle them, and there's now evidence that you can put them in an autoclave and make them safe to use a second time. We have to go with some of those, and those options are available, and doctors and medical professionals are aware of it, and they are exploring it.
And is that done hospital by hospital? How are those decisions made?
It depends on the situation. If you have a group of hospitals, for-profit or non-profit, they may have a collective decision-making approach. There are other places in rural areas where a hospital may be a standalone hospital. In those cases, it's the judgment of the health professionals at that particular hospital. It varies all across the country.
We've had some people who've done some crunching of numbers, for example, in Italy, who have proposed that we should preemptively go to some of the most at-risk populations, some nursing homes you identify, some of the counties where people are older and also have health problems, and preemptively sort of segregate them off so that they don't they're not contagious with other people. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense, and I think that we're already doing that. You're not allowed to visit a nursing home now without, at least where I have what my information suggests, that they're asking people not to visit. But we have other ways to visit people in a nursing home, with FaceTime, with the internet, with computers. This is the first time we've had an epidemic where we have this kind of access to people in ways that the germs can't bother us because they can't fall into our cell phone or our computer. So it's a safe way to visit, and you can visit with, remotely. Why not? Let's do it.
Yeah, at the same time, it's not ideal. It's not what we're used to. We're used to physical contact and being there. And it's troubling, particularly as people get sick, to think that you can't be with them. Okay, thanks so much. We really appreciate you being with us again. That's Dr. Pauline Rose now. Coming up on Balance of Power, we're going to take a look at those historically bad jobless claims numbers that came out today. Historically bad, by that I mean they are 5 times worse than the worst we've had on record. So it was bad, but it was even maybe worse than we expected. The question is, what is going to come next? How bad can it get? We're going to talk about that with Bloomberg economist Yelena Shulyatova, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we're taking a deep look at the way the coronavirus pandemic has rippled through every aspect of our lives, seemingly in a matter of days and weeks. Whether you're working from home, not working, or have to go to work, COVID-19 has changed everything. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
What in fact, the year
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
This is Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. Well, we expected U.S. jobless claims numbers out this morning to be bad, but they set a new record high, coming in 5 times higher than the last record. Well, how bad can it get after that? We welcome now Yelena Shulyatova. She's Bloomberg U.S. economist. So, Yelena, how bad were these numbers, really?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, David. So the unprecedented depth and the speed of the meltdown in the labor market highlights how the costs and the risks to the economy are. So they're very, very high. So what is different from the previous records that you mentioned is that the economy basically ran into a brick wall abruptly. So it's a sudden stop, and it's not something like what we saw in the previous recession. So when jobless claims and layoffs were multiplying over time. So this time it just stopped abruptly.
So Yelena, as an economist, how do you even start to parse this? Because we have never seen this before, I don't believe. You said we ran into a brick wall. It was a self-declared brick wall. I heard somebody today say this is the first recession ever that was declared by decree for good and sufficient reason to try to protect people from this virus. But is there any precedent you look at to figure out where we are or where we're going?
So we can look at the numbers and try to estimate the depth of the crisis in terms of economic growth, in terms of how it will impact the labor market. So, for example, we previously estimated the jobless rate would average 6.5% in the second quarter, which would correspond to roughly 5 million person increase in the level of unemployment. But if initial claims continue to run in the vicinity of 3 million for several more weeks, that would definitely mean a much higher unemployment rate. So the hardest part is to try to estimate how long it will last, because if it's just a short period of time, relatively short, we can only talk about relatively short at this point, that will not persist in the unemployment rate, and we will just quickly get back to relatively normal economic growth. But if this persists and just for several more months, then we're going to talk about an unprecedented increase in the unemployment rate and the blow to the economy.
Well, is the cavalry on its way? I mean, that is to say in the form of $2 or $2.2 trillion that they say they're going to get a lot of out right away from the federal government?
Sure. Well, the Senate passed the $2 trillion plus package, but it needs to be ratified by the House, first of all, and then, the direct help to the economy, the discretionary stimulus is probably closer to $1 trillion, which is still a large amount, but this will help people to kind of like close some income gaps in the interim. It's not going to jumpstart the economy. So in order to jumpstart the economy, you really need more. So while this sounds like a lot of money, and relative to the expected, blow to GDP growth, it is quite substantial. It's not going to stimulate the economy, and it will not help in the recovery.
In the few seconds left, how about $6 trillion? Because as I understand it, the deal they've done with the Treasury to put up some money allows the Fed to come in with perhaps another $4 trillion.
Well, in two sentences, I would say that the price tag will continue to get larger the longer we wait.
That seems fair enough. I've heard somebody say just pick a number and then double it, whatever it is. Okay, thank you so much to Bloomberg's Yelena Shurlyatova. She covers U.S. economics for us. She's a terrific economist. And now we're going to have a second hour of Balance Power coming up, and I'm delighted to say Paul Sweeney will be taking over for me. But that does it for me today. I'm David Weston. This is Balance of Power, and you are listening to Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Top chefs may be grappling with city lockdowns, temporary closures of their restaurants, and food supply interruptions during the coronavirus pandemic. But Asia's 50 Best Restaurant Awards went right on. The winners were announced in a video live stream in place of a ceremony originally planned for Saga Prefecture, Japan, during cherry blossom season. Singapore's Odette held on to the title of Asia's best restaurant for the second year running. Rounding out the top five are Cantonese restaurant The Chairman in Hong Kong, Tokyo Kaiseki Eatery Den, Neo-Parisian Bistro Bellon in Hong Kong, and Singapore-based barbecue restaurant Burnt Ends. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, a luxury hotelier has started a COVID-19 service, offering wealthy clients high-end quarantine apartments with meal delivery and medical services, including virus tests. Quarantine apartments in Zurich, Zug, and Lucerne are available for about $200 to $822 a day. Mama Adirode, Bloomberg Radio. You're living in a world built on science, political and economic.
You've got to believe the labor market gets hit.
Computer and medical.
Clarify where we are on a test.
It all makes a difference.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of governmental response?
And it's all here.
He expects the virus to peak quite a long time from now.
Get your science straight.
The hand washing campaign, is this actually a good strategy?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve?
At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all rallying as investors speculate that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. Treasuries are holding gains. The dollar fell for a third day. S&P 500 index extending its advance to almost 5%, heading for its first three-day rally since February. Health stocks and utilities are leading the way. S&P 500 index up 121 points. That is a gain of just about 5%. The Dow up 1,111 points, up now by 5.2%. And NASDAQ is up 301 points, a gain there of 4.3%. 10 years up 17.30 seconds with a yield of 0.81%. Gold is up 1.3% at $16.37 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 5.2% right now, $23.21 for a barrel of WTI. And with more on the commodity story today, here's Bloomberg's Renita Young.
The Trump administration halts plans to start buying oil for the nation's emergency reserves. It said it failed to win funding from Congress. This adds to worries over crude demand collapsing due to the coronavirus and a looming supply glut. Goldman Sachs warns crude demand would decline by almost 19 million barrels a day next month, and Bloomberg Intelligence expects the majority of the WTI bell curve to be in the $20 to $30 a barrel range for the foreseeable future. Meanwhile, the Bloomberg Commodity Index is off its lows of the day. Renita Young, Bloomberg Radio.
And right now, West Texas Intermediate crude again down 5.4%, $23.16 a barrel. Gold up 1.2%, $16.36 the ounce. The 10-year, the yield there, 0.80%. Micron Technology shares pushing higher by 7.3% after delivering a revenue forecast last night that was stronger than expected. Trading in Zoom Technologies suspended today by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission through April 8th after the stock climbed in recent weeks amid confusion with Zoom Video Communications. That's the popular virtual meeting company, Zoom Video, ticker ZM, up now by 2.4%. It is 1:02 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are higher, though not quite as much as U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is up 4%, and the S&P 500 is up 5%. France's Airbus has gained almost 22% in U.S. trading. The playmaker is higher after the U.S. Senate passed an economic rescue plan that includes $50 billion in financial support for passenger airlines. Airbus rival Boeing is up almost 13%. China's Wanda Sports Group has jumped 32%. The company agreed to sell its Ironman triathlon business to the U.S.-based Newhouse family's investment company, Advanced Publications. The deal values Ironman at $730 million. The Netherlands' ABN AMRO Bank has lost 5.2%. The lender said it will take a first-quarter hit of about $200 million for trading losses sustained by a single U.S. client because of market volatility driven by the coronavirus. And Singapore Airlines has dropped 10.5% in limited trading. The carrier disclosed plans to raise about $6.2 billion through sales of shares and convertible bonds to shore up its finances. And state-run investor Temasek Holdings will be a buyer, Charlie.
Right, we thank you very much. Dave Wilson tracking those American depository receipts. Speaking of the airlines, well, at least the airplane manufacturers, Boeing shares surging again today, up by another 13%. Among some of the airlines, Delta is up 10.8%, American Airlines Group up 6.8%, Southwest up by 9.5%, and JetBlue up now by 3.2%. Manufacturing giant Caterpillar has withdrawn its outlook for 2020, adding to evidence that the coronavirus crisis is disrupting U.S. industrial activity. The company says uncertain economic conditions and weaker demand, potential supply constraints, as well as government efforts to contain the pandemic spread have spurred Caterpillar to temporarily suspend operations at some facilities. It does say it's still running a majority of its U.S. business and plans to continue operations overseas. Caterpillar shares up now by 4.2%. Recapping S&P up 121 points, a gain of 4.9%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We need an economy that works for everybody.
I am the one who has the broadest coalition.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race. These lawyers brought the case, and in my view, they should be sanctioned.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. I'm Paul Sweeney, sitting in for David Weston. What a day in the markets again today. Started off with those job numbers, 3.3 million jobless claims last week. Just extraordinary. That's 4 times higher than the previous record set in 1982. Yet the market's up 5% more or less on the equities. Looking more towards Congress and that stimulus bill that is winding its way through Congress. That is the bullish driver for this market. To get a sense of how that fiscal stimulus bill may or may not impact the economy and over what time frame, we welcome Robert Shapiro, chairman of Sonicon, and he's former senior economic advisor for Democratic presidential candidates, including Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Robert, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, just give us your perspective on that jobless claims number this morning.
Oh, statistically speaking, these numbers are an earthquake, and the earthquake is far from over. Over the next few months, unemployment is going to look a lot like the 1930s.
So give us a sense. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there won't be red-lines and vast desperation that we saw in the 30s because Congress is stepping up a lot more. But when you look into these claims, first of all, they're initial claims. It takes weeks for people to get benefits. Second, in states that have been shut down for a while, like California, claims skyrocketed 2 and 3 weeks ago. California's claims last week actually fell from the week before, but they were still several times normal levels. So businesses that shut down weeks ago continue to lay off people. On top of that, millions of people eligible for unemployment haven't applied. At the bottom of the 2008 recession, half of all unemployed people hadn't applied, mainly because they didn't believe they were eligible or because states made it hard. Obama and Congress expanded the program, and by the end, almost everyone eligible had applied. Of course, millions of people weren't eligible. People who work for themselves, for example, independent contractors. Now, the stimulus Congress is about to pass expands those benefits. It's $600 per week for 4 months for almost anyone who loses a job. The message will get out, and some states will be overwhelmed, but in time, most Americans will figure it out.
So, Robert, given what we do know about the stimulus package, do you think it's is it the right focus? Is it enough? What's your take on it?
It's a very good first step. Look, what the support the government is going to have to provide doesn't depend on the government. It depends on the virus. If the virus recedes pretty quickly, which is not very likely, we may need one more stimulus, but the economy will probably be in recession for much of this year. But the stimulus we've passed with a little more will probably be enough to end the recession in the fourth quarter. But if the virus doesn't recede quickly, we're going to need a lot more. We're going to need interest-free bridge loans to businesses that cover not only their employees' wages and salaries, and they have to retain their employees, but also their fixed costs, commercial and industrial rent, utilities, interest on business loans, and maybe most important, health care benefits. 2/3 of Americans get their health insurance through private sector jobs, and employers pick up 70 to 80% of those premiums. Now, if 2/3 of businesses took those kinds of bridge loans, we're talking $5 trillion for 6 months. We probably can't borrow that much without spiking interest rates. So if the virus does not recede in the next 6 to 8 weeks, the Fed will probably have to create the money.
Interesting. Well, some news is crossing the Bloomberg terminal here that is not positive. Italy reports 6,153 new coronavirus cases, the most in 5 days. So just in 30 seconds, Robert, V-shaped recovery, U or L, or too early to call?
Well, I think that it's too late for a V. If the virus recedes, we're looking at a U. And if it doesn't recede within 2 months, we're in an L.
Interesting. Okay, Robert, really appreciate your thoughts. Robert Shapiro, chairman of Sonicon, and he's a former senior economic advisor for Democratic presidential candidates, including Presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. We appreciate your thoughts there. So again, some sobering news out of Italy, kind of folks are watching to see when we're going to see a fade in Italy. We've had some down days, which is good news in terms of the number of new cases, but we've also in the last week or so had some up days, spike days, and this is one of them today. So we're closely watching that as we think about flattening the curve or the shape of the curve here in the United States. We heard Governor Cuomo earlier today talking about New York and kind of the issues there as a big hotspot. Right now, the markets are up, facing, really reflecting, I think, kind of what's going on down in Washington, which is we're getting some love for the financial aid package, the fiscal stimulus. Coming up, we're going to talk to Michael Regan and break down the news on the equity markets coming up. That'll be on Bloomberg, Balance of Power. This is Bloomberg.
Leaders are born.
What does it take to get the markets back on the rails?
Born leaders are here.
The timeline for that can be slow.
Karen Moscow.
Several nations are negotiating to evacuate diplomats.
And Nathan Hager.
How are you advising clients to navigate the shifting headlines?
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Are we heading into correction territory, do you think?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
The market's in focus every...
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we're taking a deep look at the way the coronavirus pandemic has rippled through every aspect of our lives, seemingly in a matter of days and weeks. Whether you're working from home, not working, or have to go to work, COVID-19 has changed everything. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
.org. Brought to you by the Guild Foundation and the Ad Council.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We begin with an update from Italy. Italy reporting 6,100 new coronavirus cases, the most in 5 days. 6,153 new coronavirus cases in Italy. Stocks are moving higher in this Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by Audi. Don't let someone else drive off in the Audi model you've always wanted. Visit a tri-state Audi dealer to get behind the wheel of yours today. Stocks are surging. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all pushing higher. Stocks are jumping as investors speculate that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. Treasuries held gains. The dollar fell for a third day. Here's where equity markets stand. We've got the S&P 500 index up 106 points now. That is a gain of 4.3%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 966 points, up 4.5%. And NASDAQ is up 264 points, up now by 3.6%. 10 years up 23.30 seconds, 0.79%. Gold is up 1.2% at $16.35 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude now slumping by 6%, $23.01 a barrel on WTI. It is down by $1.48 a barrel. Brent 26.46, a drop there of 3.4%. So again, recapping, stock surge, S&P up 106 points, a gain there of 4.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of power continues. And now here's Paul Sweeney.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Paul Sweeney sitting in for David Weston. And as Charlie was just reporting, strong gains in the equities today. We have 4% gains across the S&P and the Dow, NASDAQ up about 3.5% as well. To get a sense of where the action is, we welcome our good friend Michael Regan, Bloomberg Senior Editor and lead blogger for Markets Live. So, Michael, another green day on the screen after just a tremendous sell-off over the past couple of weeks. What do you make of today's action?
You know, Paul, it's interesting. I mean, there is obviously some positive news in the market with the stimulus package advancing in Congress. And it really looks like many of the measures that the Federal Reserve took to boost liquidity seem to be working. You know, we've had a very substantial crack in that ferocious dollar rally that we saw that was sort of indicative of the funding squeeze going on around the world. And we're seeing Treasury yields sort of behave the way you would expect and not these wild swings that we had seen previously, which, you know, a lot of people just attributed to a lack of liquidity. So in a sense, it does make sense for the markets to rally on this news. But the thing I keep thinking is that it's at times like this, it's very easy to confuse traders who are pushing the market one way versus, you know, real fundamental investors who believe that we've sort of turned a corner here, that the tide is turning on the damage being done from the virus. I think, you know, traders know this playbook of bear markets very well, that within any nasty bear market, you have some of the biggest rallies in stocks, some of the biggest single-day rallies that you ever see in your lifetime occur during the worst bear markets. So it's kind of hard to separate the two right now. Are traders just basically, you know, riding this for a quick buck? And is that what's really, you know, sort of exaggerating these gains? Or is there actual, you know, confidence and optimism that the stimulus is going to really turn the tide on this crisis? I think it's probably a combination of both, though I would suspect that it's largely trader and momentum sort of generated at the moment, and that there is a very good chance, you know, this isn't over. We're going to see, it's natural for the market to kind of go back and test those lows that it set last week, and actually earlier this week as well.
So, Michael, what we've heard over the last week or so is concerns about the liquidity in the credit markets, and that was really a concern, and that's where people really needed to focus. What's going on there these days?
That's to many degrees has been alleviated very much. You know, we're seeing, especially in the investment grade bond space, you know, we're seeing a very much a snapback rally in that space. Junk is still a little tenuous. Mainly because the Federal Reserve's efforts are focused more on the investment grade space. So that sort of real acute liquidity strain, I mean, I think it's probably safe to say it's still a relatively illiquid market. But it's not at that sort of panic level that we saw at a week or two ago when this really just got out of hand. So it has improved. I do think it's a day-by-day, minute-to-minute type of situation, and there are likely more shoes to drop in all of this. As you mentioned, I heard Charlie mention in the lead-in here, we saw those numbers come out of Italy about an increase in virus cases there, and you did see almost a 1% drop in the S&P 500 off of that news. So still a very robust rally, but it just shows you that it's a very tenuous rebound that we're seeing, and it shouldn't surprise anyone if we do see some more nasty declines mixed in with this rebound.
So we've heard some strategists just today, Michael, suggesting that while they're not willing to say we've seen the bottom of the market, we've seen perhaps the beginning of building the bottom. Does that seem reasonable to you, given kind of the volume we've seen and the big swings we've seen?
It's reasonable, Paul, from sort of a best guess type of scenario. Anyone I talk to, and even when I make my own comments, it's hard to have much confidence in any sort of analysis you do of the market right now because almost everything we're seeing is unprecedented. We've never seen an economic shock like this. I mean, look at the jobless claim spike this morning. There's more of that to come. And on the other hand, we've never seen this sort of aggressive response from both the government and policymakers. So I do think, it does look like the beginnings of a bottom could be forming. Again, though, I don't think anyone is very confident and sort of betting the ranch on that being the case. I think, most people I talk to, and just any sort of historical study would lead you to believe this too, is that we'll at least, are very likely to go back to that low we set in the market and do a test of it, as they call it, the TA people call. If that holds, for a day or two, there will obviously be more confidence. We'll gather that was the ultimate low. But if we blow right through that to a new low, then it's kind of no man's land again. So, as far as it's better to see what we're seeing now than to continue to see a free fall. Right. But I don't think anyone is really, or really should bet the farm that low is set in stone.
Very good. Michael Regan, thanks so much for joining us. Michael Regan, Bloomberg senior editor and lead blogger for Markets Live. Coming up, very interesting. We're going to talk to Scott Heckinger, Brooklyn public defender, talk about how the coronavirus is spreading rapidly at Rikers. That's an issue that we've been hearing about more recently over the past couple of days. We'll have that coming up on Bloomberg, Balance of Power.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street is celebrating the unanimous Senate vote that sends a $2 trillion economic rescue bill to a House vote. The Dow is up over 1,100 points, or 5%. S&P 500 up nearly 5%, and the Nasdaq is climbing 4%. Meanwhile, we're seeing the huge gains on Wall Street despite job numbers that are drawing less positive comparisons to the Great Depression. The Labor Department says a record 3.3 million people filed for weekly jobless claims. The previous record was almost 700,000. And there's a dire forecast from economists at J.P. Morgan. They now forecast a historic 25% contraction in U.S. economic growth in the second quarter, which begins April 1st. That's on top of a 10% tumble forecast for the current first quarter. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Adopt U.S. Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you could keep the top?
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, for years, U.S. preppers have invested time and money getting ready to tackle imaginary doomsday scenarios. So,
you can't make up a story anymore. It doesn't work. We've got coronavirus, and it's not hypothetical, it's actually happening.
don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
The idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
We go there.
Let's talk about export numbers because they've been quite shocking. Korea, we saw Singapore, Japan too.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up, Scott Heckinger Brooklyn public defender on how the less fortunate are being particularly hard hit by the coronavirus, and that includes those that are in prison. But first, let's get a Bloomberg Business Flash from Charlie Pellet. Charlie, what do you have?
Hi, thank you very much. We've got stocks higher across the board with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ are well off their session highs, but still pushing higher with the S&P up now by 88 points. That is a gain of 3.5%. The Dow up 800 points, higher by 3.8%. NASDAQ up 209, higher by 2.8%. Stocks rallying as investors speculate that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. Treasuries holding gains, the dollar down for a third day. Right now we have got the 10-year up 21.30 seconds. Looking at the yield now, 0.79%. Gold is up 1.3%, $16.37 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude tumbling right now by 7.1%, down $1.76 a barrel, $22.73 on WTI. So an update across the board for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Lots of economic data today, including the all-important jobless claims report. Claims topping 3 million last week, a record as the coronavirus shut down employers nationwide. And with more on that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
It's the biggest insight yet into the toll the pandemic is inflicting on the world's largest economy. Employers are shuddering as the nation grapples with this deadly outbreak. Bank of America economist Michelle Meyer calls it an abrupt plunge in a recession. State unemployment agencies are in overdrive to get money to the workers of every town USA. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Morgan Stanley will not be cutting its workforce this year, even as the coronavirus pandemic sends markets into turmoil. Morgan Stanley shares up 2.9%. CEO James Gorman telling employees today the bank will take stock at the end of the year after central banks and governments have time to try to stabilize the economy. In his memo, Gorman said, quote, "I am sure some, if not many of you, are worried about your jobs." He says, while long-term we can't be sure how this will all play out, we want to commit to you that there will not be a reduction in force at Morgan Stanley in 2020. Aside from a performance issue or a breach of the code of conduct, your jobs are secure. Again, Morgan Stanley shares up now by 2.9%. Recapping equities rally, S&P up 85, a gain there of 3.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. And once again, here he is, your host, the Thursday edition. We've got Paul Sweeney.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Well, this coronavirus is clearly impacting all parts of the economy, all parts of the country, all parts of the world. Those less fortunate, however, are seeing an inordinate amount of impact. Give us a sense of where that's hitting in certain sectors of the populace. We welcome Scott Heckinger. He's a Brooklyn public defender. Scott, thanks so much for joining us. I know I'm just thinking about Rikers Island, a coronavirus outbreak there. What can you tell us about that?
What I can tell you is, and first of all, thanks for having me on, is that public defenders, social workers, jail services specialists that work in my office and around not only the city, state, but the country, have long known how kind of cruel, inhumane the conditions are on Rikers Island and other jails throughout the country. And so but what's happening right now is exposing what we've known for a long time to the rest of the world. And what we know right now is that in the same way that we on the outside were fortunate enough to be free, need to be keeping social distance, need to be doing things like wear masks and have gloves on our hands and take these basic precautions, those precautions cannot be taken in a jail environment. On Rikers Island, what we're hearing from the people who we represent is that they are packed like sardines, that there are 29 people to an individual toilet, that plates and food trays are dirty, that the people who are serving the food are not taking precautions like wearing masks, like that people that are symptomatic are kept in the same areas as people who are asymptomatic. And so what you have is an environment where added space is already subpar with in terms of medical care and health. And now with this coronavirus, you have a condition where an outbreak is already happening, is only likely to get worse. Right now, it's 77% faster, the rate of infection than in New York City alone, which has one of the highest rates of infection in the world. So it's very scary. We're really concerned.
What can Rikers Island and other jails and other prisons who have just by nature confined populations, a lot of people in a relatively small space, what in reality can they do?
Forget what the jails can do for a second. What we need to be doing is first, what the leaders, what prosecutors, what police, governors, mayors need to be doing is, first of all, stopping the influx. The business as usual, far too many people who arrest for far too many things coming into the system to begin with. And the folks that are already in, we need to decarcerate. The only way that jails and prisons are going to be able to take the even most basic steps to try to do the kind of separation that's necessary, to create the spaces, to have the resources to be able to do the bare minimum, is decarcerate. And for a lot of people out there, they're like, oh my God, people are going to be released on the streets. Well, let's talk about who's in jails and prisons. Let's talk about Rikers Island. The vast majority of people on Rikers Island are being held pre-trial solely because they can't afford the amount of money to hold bail that would get them out. There are over 600 people currently on Rikers Island who are being held for non-crimes. People who are on parole and missed curfew or failed to check in or failed to update about a particular, about their new address. They're being held awaiting their parole hearings. There's 6,000 people just in New York alone who are being held either in Rikers or in jail or in prisons for these what are called technical parole violations. And there's thousands of people who are serving less than a year and are going to be getting out soon anyway for low-level offenses like misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. And so Governor Cuomo, I am hoping that he takes action to grant mass clemencies, to release those people who are in on parole holds. I hope that prosecutors start consenting to release some more people who are held pre-trial, and we just have to shrink the system. But just last piece on that, importantly, this can't just happen right now. This is not important to decarcerate right now. We are now seeing the folly of half a century of focusing on punishment as opposed to public health responses. And we need to never going forward do business as usual anymore.
Well, Scott, I mean, what in reality have you heard from the state of New York or the city of New York about what they're going to do? Because we have seen in New Jersey some prisoners have in fact been released. Is there talk that anything that can be done, particularly in the city and the state?
So a couple of things. So in the city, what we've already seen happen is that de Blasio has released, he released already 75 and he announced a list of about 300. We don't know who those people are. My understanding is that there are just a portion of the folks who are serving those short sentences. The mayor needs to release more people. Like New Jersey. New Jersey, they released everyone serving short sentences for misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. Unfortunately, the New York City mayor kind of drew distinctions between those. They all should be released. Governor Cuomo, like I said, can right now order the New York Parole Department to release those being held on technical parole violations, either in local jails and prisons. That would be 6,000 people currently held on non-crimes. And so they can and they must do more. I hope they do so.
How about some of the other marginalized people in society? Greater than expected impact from the virus?
Yes. I mean, you imagine just New York City, or you think about New York City as a place where, first of all, you already have just a lot more people, high density populations. And then you get into the neighborhoods and communities where the people who I serve and represent live. And they're living in affordable housing in New York City. First of all, it's hard to come by. And so far too many people are living either on the streets or in shelters where violence and subpar health conditions, again, before coronavirus, also already ran rampant. And it only leaves them at higher risk right now. And even in NYCHA buildings, so public housing, the same is true, where the conditions even before coronavirus were all too conducive to illnesses and to kind of subpar medical condition. And so every one of these problems that public defenders and social workers were keenly aware of and have been fighting for decades are just exploding in hyper-focus right now.
Scott Heckinger, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your perspective on an aspect of the issue that perhaps isn't getting enough attention. Scott Heckinger, senior attorney, Brooklyn Defender Services, and founder and director of Zealous, on some of the issues being faced in not just New York City's jails and other communities, but also around the country. We'll certainly keep on top of that. Markets up. We will have more for you in just a moment. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
This is a vital update about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine, to travel to work if you absolutely cannot work from home, to provide care to those who need it, or to exercise. Always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we're taking a deep look at the way the coronavirus pandemic has rippled through every aspect of our lives, seemingly in a matter of days and weeks. Whether you're working from home, not working, or have to go to work, COVID-19 has changed everything. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all rallying. Investors are speculating that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. Treasuries holding gains, the dollar down for a third day. S&P, though, on track for its first three-day rally since February. Health stocks and utilities leading the way. Dow Jones Industrial Average momentarily climbed 20% above its March 23rd trough. Here's where we stand. We have got the S&P 500 index up 100 points. That is a gain of 4.1%. Dow Industrial's up 922 points. That's a gain of 4.4%. NASDAQ up now by 237 points, up by 3.2%. 10-year, the yield there, 0.78%, up 26 seconds. Jobless claims surged to a record 3.28 million Americans last week as businesses shut down to help prevent the spread of the virus. Simona Makuta is senior economist at State Street Global.
I do not anticipate that a month from now we are going to see numbers of the same magnitude, right? I mean, it's spiking extraordinarily high, but I would expect that the correction, the improvement to be quite dramatic as well in a few weeks' time.
S&P Global Ratings and Moody's Investor Service are downgrading American companies at the fastest pace in more than a decade as debt-saddled corporations and entire industries struggle with a dramatic slump in demand brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. Downgrades are outpacing upgrades at the two biggest credit rating firms by more than 3-to-1 to start the year, the most on a quarterly basis since the depths of the financial crisis, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. Micron Technology shares are higher after giving a revenue forecast that was stronger than expected. The results are a positive sign for the semiconductor industry, which has struggled against the coronavirus pandemic, a headwind that has pressured both supply chains and demand. Right now, Micron is up by 4% at $44.29. Some of the airlines flying high today on stimulus hopes. Delta, for example, up 6.4%. American Airlines Group up 3.6%. Southwest up 8.3%. And JetBlue up now by 1.4%. Manufacturing giant Caterpillar has withdrawn its outlook for 2020, adding to evidence that the coronavirus crisis is disrupting U.S. industrial activity. Caterpillar shares up by 3.5%. Recapping, S&P up 106, up by 4.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Paul Sweeney sitting in for David Weston. Earlier today, David chatted with Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, about the coronavirus, the government's response, and most notably about the fiscal stimulus package that's about to be passed by Congress to combat the virus. Let's listen in.
Let's start with the logistics. Do you have any doubts that this will get passed, and when do you think it'll get passed in the House?
No doubts whatsoever. Tomorrow morning, last night, our distinguished Majority Leader, Mr. Hoyer, gave notice to members when the Senate bill passed that we would be coming to the floor on Friday morning. We have to give 24 hours notice of bringing a bill to the floor. And so that will be Friday morning, and it will be a lively, a wonderful debate. We're very proud of the legislation. We'll have a strong bipartisan vote, and hopefully by noon we'll be finished. That will only depend on how carefully we have to come in small numbers to the floor of the House to vote. but our debate will be finished, and we're very proud of it. We're very proud of the legislation because we believe that many elements of the House Democratic bill were contained in the Senate bill. It helped support the Senate Democrats who did jujitsu on the Republican bill. It was very corporate-oriented. This is worker-focused, and so we're very pleased with that.
And Madam Speaker,
just to change the leverage.
As you know, Madam Speaker, there was a lot of impatience to get this done. When we thought we had it, we didn't have it. But it was held up for some of those issues that you're talking about that makes you prouder than you otherwise would have been. What's the most number one thing or two things that really you think improved because of the delay of a couple of days?
Well, let me just say it wasn't held up and it wasn't a delay. We saw a $2 trillion bill last Saturday. This is the legislative process. We have to see what it is and see how we can weigh in to get a compromise that works for the American people. So we actually should have been doing this over a much longer period of time where we'd have more transparency and the public could be more aware of the provisions in the bill. So this was a very accelerated pace as it was. But what we needed to do was to change it from corporate trickle down to worker bubble up. And in that way, it said that we do recognize that certain industries are going to need federal funds, and we want those industries to know that there are conditions to make sure that workers are protected, that they stay employed, that they're on the payroll, and that their rights are protected. That's very important. Strong infusion of funds for small business. We're very excited about that, and that is for the first time some grants in small business administration, and that process facilitated greatly to aid small businesses, which are, as you know, the lifeblood of our economy, of job creators, the wealth creators, so very, very important. So again, many of these changes that changed it from trickle down to bubble up took a matter of 48 or so hours. But that would not be called a delay. That would be called an improvement.
Fair enough. Let's talk about small businesses for a moment, because as you say, they really employ a lot of the people in the country. We've seen a lot of layoffs already at things like restaurants and things. How confident are you that that money can get to those small businesses? Larger businesses have more capital. They can tide it over and keep people on payroll. Smaller ones can't. Small Business Administration, are they up to that task?
Well, I just actually this morning spoke with the Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Mnuchin, and we have been talking about this for a while, that we cannot leave it up to the process of the SBA. There's an initiative that he put forward that the banks could do the direct lending with the imprimatur of the SBA, and that would make this all go very much faster. And that will be a vast improvement, really necessary because of the urgency of getting those funds into the hands of the small businesses. And actually, there's also a loan forgiveness in there in terms of rent and utilities and the rest, depending on how a business thrives with the resources that they receive in a loan.
That was Bloomberg's David Weston chatting with Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, really kind of going over what is set to be a historic stimulus package, $2 trillion, expected to be voted on tomorrow morning as per Speaker Pelosi, and then hopefully get to the president's desk. And that is clearly needed by this economy, particularly when you think about the jobs number, the jobless claims number that came in this morning, 3.3 million, 4 times the record of the last record claims number. So that's the first glimpse, economic data point that we've really seen that confirms the depths that the economy is struggling right now. We're certainly going to get some more information coming forward. And that raises the question for a lot of economists is what type of recession are we going to have? How bad will the second quarter be? We've seen some numbers come out of Wall Street, 20 to 30% down in terms of GDP contraction. Obviously, we've never seen numbers like that before, so we know the second quarter is going to be very bad. The question for many economists and lawmakers, I'm sure, is the pace of the recovery, the scope of the recovery. Some who are looking for a V-shaped recovery see double-digit gains in GDP, 10 to 14% in the third and fourth quarters. A lot of folks are coming out after seeing that jobs number today and saying, maybe not. That may be a little bit longer than that. So that's kind of where we are in terms of the economic outlook. Markets today up on that stimulus news. news, we have the S&P, again, as Charlie Pellet's been reporting all afternoon, showing strength across the board. The S&P up 4%. That's 105 points. Looking at the Dow Jones Industrials, that's up 950 points, 4.5%. That puts the Dow at 22,000, let's call it 140 right here on the Dow. So definitely a pickup in the markets. Coming up on Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Jason Kelly. They'll be coming up just next in a few moments. I'm Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Balance of Power.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information?
This is a vital update about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine, to travel to work if you absolutely cannot work from home, to provide care to those who need it, or to exercise. Always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, for years, U.S. preppers have invested time and money getting ready to tackle imaginary doomsday scenarios. So
you can't make up a story anymore. It doesn't work. We've got coronavirus, and it's not hypothetical. It's actually happening.
Don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great shot.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from our homes in New York and New Jersey, welcome to Bloomberg Business Week for this Thursday, March 26, 2020. Carol Masser, along with my co-host Jason Kelly. And Jason, U.S. stocks are definitely rallying despite that surge in jobless claims to a record, but we still have 3 days of gains when it comes to the equity markets.
Well, and if we hold those gains, Carol, that 3-day rally could be the biggest 3-day gain since 1933, which is auspicious for lots of reasons. We'll get into that. All hopes on this rescue package that we're still waiting to pass Congress, as you say.
And this has a headline crossing where the president wants to categorize counties as low, medium, high risk when it comes to the virus. We'll have more on that over the next few hours. First up, let's get a check on your top business stories and an update on that trading day. Here is Charlie Pellet.
What a day again, and happy Thursday to you all. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ, they're all rallying right now. Investors speculating that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. Treasuries are holding gains, dollar falling for a third day. Right now, the 10-year yield, 0.79%. Stocks rallying, the Dow up 904 points. That's a gain of 4.3%. S&P up 99, higher by 4%. NASDAQ up 249, up by 3.4%. Gold now higher by $20 the ounce at $16.37. That's a gain of 1.3%. Sharp losses for crude oil today. West Texas Intermediate plunging 7.5% down to $1.83 a barrel, $22.66 on WTI. Again, recapping stocks moving higher, on track for their first three-day rally since February. S&P up 103 points, up by 4.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. The massive stimulus package, that is certainly on the front burner, front of mind. Carol Massar, we're going to hear from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in exclusive chat about that $2 trillion stimulus package that she had with our own David Weston.
Yeah, looking forward to that. We are, though, of course, still in the middle of an extreme health crisis, the U.S. death toll exceeding 1,000. We will be hearing from a suite of leaders, and that includes the CEO at Trivago. Also, University of Minnesota President Joan Gable is back with us, and the Chief Security Officer at Huawei Technologies USA. So really going to get at it from corporate views, academic views, what's going on in terms of how they're coping personally as well as with their employees and their companies, Jason.
Absolutely. And so much to cover, as you say, from so many different angles. I mean, this is the story we're trying to tell every day, because this isn't one story in many ways. It is one story with many, many angles. You talked about the president, maybe categorizing people by counties and in terms of low, medium, and high risk. So it becomes more and more complicated as we do that, because we are seeing this in New York City, the epicenter, the tri-state area, certainly of this crisis.
All right, let's set the Business Week agenda. With us is Vince Signorella, global macro strategist at Bloomberg News. On the phone in New York, I believe. Remote from New Jersey is, of course, our Bloomberg stocks editor, Dave Wilson. Dave, let's start with you. Set the scene. It's a rally, although I did see us rolling over a little bit before.
Right. I mean, there has been some back and forth, no question, but the S&P 500 has been solidly higher all along. You have a number of companies that you might expect to be leading the gains. Some of the more indebted companies like Coty, biggest advance in the S&P 500 at the moment. Boeing, which stands to benefit, at least from our reporting, from the economic rescue package that's been passed. I mean, if for no other reason, then, it's going to be $50 billion in financial support for the airlines, which are higher at this point. But the one that really jumps out in today's trading is what's going on with the credit card companies.
Dave,
they're
hang
way
on.
up.
Dave, I apologize that we have to interrupt. We do want to go to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. He is holding a press conference. Let's listen in.
So it's going to take several weeks at least for us to begin seeing a real impact from the social distancing measures that we put in place. And remember a couple of things. We have warned folks. We've told you these numbers are going up. Sadly, the number of lost lives is going up. Our job is to fight fiercely with unlimited resources to save as many of those lives as possible. But the number that's really spiking now into the thousands are the positive test results. That's partly, we've said all along, partly due to some amount of community spread, and also partly due to the fact that we've opened our testing regimes up and down the state dramatically. Weequahic Park, for instance, opened today in Essex County. So that's an Essex County-sponsored testing site. We've been telling you over the course of the past couple of weeks, pending test site openings. You're seeing some of this. And again, the silver lining is the more data we have, the better the experts can manage the virus and also predict where it is that we're headed. On a related note, I spoke earlier today with a friend, a fellow former member. I'm a former member of the diplomatic community, the South Korean ambassador, Ambassador Lee, and we spoke about a couple of things. First, that nation stands as an example of how aggressive social distancing policies can truly help in our getting out ahead and then staying out ahead of coronavirus. I also assured him that the Korean population, which is exploding in New Jersey, especially in places like Bergen County, that was a community that we hold dear and that we would stand with them even in the face of any bad behavior of blaming one community or another. And I'll come back to that in a few minutes. It was a productive conversation. So everyone, please, please, please continue to follow our stay-at-home directive. Please think of others across our state, let alone within your own family, whose lives that you depend on doing the smart thing and the right thing. Don't think that because you feel fine after a few days or even 5 or 6 or 7 days that it's safe to resume your previous normal lifestyle. It is not. I'm aware that some school districts, on a separate matter, have already begun advising families as to when they anticipate reopening. Let me be perfectly clear on this. That decision rests with yours truly. We will not be prepared to revisit the closure until at least April 17th, at the very earliest. The decision to reopen will be based on careful discussion with our public health and safety experts and with our educators and districts, and will be guided by the facts on the ground. Again, we will not revisit this question until at least April 17. I appreciate, believe me, that everyone is anxious to get back. I've got 4 kids who are doing distance learning right now at home, but we will not do this piecemeal. We will do this together. I meant to say this earlier, by the way, but I'll come back to that in a moment. Separately, I'm bouncing around here, forgive me. I have an announcement regarding the testing sites, which I referred to a minute ago, the mass testing sites at Bergen Community College and the PNC Bank Arts Center. On this Saturday, and Pat Callahan will correct me if I get this wrong, March 28th. On this Saturday, and Pat Callahan will correct me if I get this wrong, March 28th, these sites, both of them, will be accepting symptomatic healthcare workers and first responders, police, fire, and EMS only. By the way, check that image out. Unbelievable. That says it all about the healthcare workers and first responders who are laying it on the line. Again, this Saturday, March 28th, both at Bergen Community College as well as at the PNC Bank Arts Center, only symptomatic healthcare workers and first responders, police, fire, and EMS. The general public will not be able to access these sites on this Saturday. And then starting on Sunday, March 29th, these sites will move to a new schedule. This new schedule will be posted to our one-stop reference site at covid19.nj.gov, covid19.nj.gov. Each day they are open, these sites will collect 500 samples. Again, we remind you, symptomatic people only going. We are taking this extraordinary step to preserve the health and safety of the tremendous women and men working at these sites. And then starting not this Saturday, but the Saturday after, April 4th, and every Saturday to follow, the PNC Bank Arts Center site will be dedicated only to symptomatic healthcare workers and first responders, by the way, with valid credentials only. So let me just step back and make sure everybody got that. This Saturday, the 28th, both Bergen Community College and PNC Bank Arts Center, only symptomatic healthcare workers and first responders. Then beginning next Saturday, April 4th, on every Saturday, PNC Bank Arts Center only will be dedicated to symptomatic healthcare workers and first responders. For the days both in between those Saturdays and after April 4th, we'll go to a new schedule, likely Pat on and off, I think, fair to say. Monday, one will be open, the other will come back on Tuesday, we'll go back Wednesday, etc. And again, this is a very manpower-intensive operation, Judy. And there's a lot of healthcare workers in addition to state police, county, local police, National Guard, and we have got to preserve our assets, and our most precious assets are our people. I thank both the Attorney General, Gabriel Graywall, and Colonel Pat Callahan for their efforts to ensure our frontline responders are protected. Separate, we're bouncing around here. I am pleased to report that my request for a major disaster declaration request to FEMA has been approved by the President, meaning we will now have access to greater essential federal support to help our residents through this emergency. It means we can lift some remaining bureaucratic barriers to assistance as well and be able to augment our response even more efficiently. And again, this is unrelated to the passage in the Senate and hopefully tomorrow by the House and then signed by the President of the $2+ trillion economic package. I spent a considerable amount of time on this one yesterday with Vice President Pence, last night with FEMA Administrator Pete Gaynor, and others making our case for this declaration. And I thank the administration, the president, the vice president, especially FEMA, for hearing our pleas and responding. And I also want to thank the tremendous work of the team, Attorney General Graywall, Colonel Callahan, Director Maples, Dan Kelly, and my office and their teams in getting this done. Additionally, we have been for its passage, and we are now working around the clock with our federal delegation and our own teams to get a full accounting of what and how much is in the federal stimulus bill for our state and for our families. As I said yesterday, it's a very good step in the right direction. Let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But I also want to reiterate what I said yesterday. We will undoubtedly need more assistance. I'm not going to stop pushing for that in any respect. This bill is but a first step in the right direction, a big step, but a first step. And we will certainly need billions more, and I'll keep working with my fellow governors and our respective delegations. I want to give a particular shout out to our senators, Bob Menendez. He and I just exchanged notes a few minutes ago. He was real time in the cockpit on this one. Cory Booker. I had a particularly important relationship in terms of on the House side with Bonnie Watson-Coleman, who is New Jersey's sole representative on the Appropriations Committee. I had a good conversation last night with Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin. My plea is the more flexibility this bill provides states, particularly for the State Stabilization Fund, the better off we're all going to be. Again, I'm going to keep moving around here. I apologize, Judy, I'm keeping you waiting, but these are all important preambles to your presentation. We got a real, not unexpected, but we got a real gut punch this morning as a nation and as a state with a release of the federal unemployment numbers. More than 3.3 million Americans filing for unemployment benefits last week. In New Jersey, 155,000 workers filed for unemployment. That's 16 times the number that filed the week before. This makes federal assistance to backstop our state unemployment system even more critical. It's also a reason why I signed legislation yesterday to expand our temporary disability insurance and family leave insurance programs to provide more workers with access to paid leave benefits during public health emergencies. I thank Senate President Steve Sweeney and Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter and their colleagues for leading this change. And as it also pertains to federal support, we are continuing to move aggressively to build out our hospital capacity as we outlined yesterday. And to that, I have continued my push with the federal government for the supplies that we will need from the National Strategic Stockpile. And these are the so-called personal protective equipment. And we reiterated our ask, and I'll give you a couple of data points of what's on that list. 4.5 million N95 masks and 2,500 ventilators, and frankly, everything in between, masks, gowns, gloves, etc. Regarding PPE, we have created an online form through which businesses and non-hospital healthcare facilities in possession of PPE, not required for the provision of critical healthcare services, whereby that form you can submit information about their inventory. Per Executive Order 109, which I signed on Monday, this information must be submitted by 5 p.m. tomorrow. That form is available at covid19.nj.gov/PPE report. Again, covid19.nj.gov/PPE report. And I want to give Colonel Callahan a big shout out here. For anyone who has PPE they wish to donate, they can reach out to us at covid19.nj.gov/PPE donations. That's again covid19.nj.gov. That's the basic central repository website, and then you hit /PPE donations or PPE donations at njsp.org. I got that right? How many emails do we have, do you know? 750. So 2 days ago I said 350. Then it was yesterday 450 or 500. Today 750. And we need it. And I've also given shouts out to our corporate partners over the past couple of weeks who have really stepped up. L'Oreal, one of the iconic French companies, has stepped up in a big way to provide hand sanitizer, which we absolutely need. Again, bouncing around, forgive me. Earlier today, as a part of our Main Street stimulus focus, the Economic Development Authority Board practiced social distancing and met via conference call to approve an initial $75 million program to help stabilize the many small businesses who are the most vulnerable among our employers to the economic shockwaves from this emergency. Overall, this program will be able to provide direct financial assistance and support for, we believe, between 3,000 and 5,000 small businesses. And it bears repeating, the majority of New Jerseyans work for small businesses. So this isn't just about supporting our small and mid-sized business owners, which it is. It's also about supporting the men and women who work for them. Our recovery begins with our small businesses. In particular, the EDA's approach is built around a number of pillars in different buckets, and among them they include a $5 million emergency grant program that will provide direct near-term cash assistance to the smallest and most vulnerable of our businesses. $10 million in zero-interest loans for small and medium-sized enterprises who need direct financial support. Greater support for private sector lenders, in particular community-based lenders. Direct financial support for entrepreneurs and other early-stage firms that cannot access traditional banking resources due to this emergency. These are just a few of the things on the EDA's list. Any business or organization wanting more information should visit cv.business.nj.gov. CV is in coronavirus, business.nj.gov. And to all members of our states, I mentioned this a minute ago, our state's corporate, philanthropic, and banking communities, I continue to ask for your help in ensuring our small businesses stay on their feet. Not just the equipment and resources that you've donated, but to really stand behind and stand firmly with our small businesses. I urge you to reach out to the EDA today for ways that you can be a part of our response and recovery and long-term success. I know the EDA, under the leadership of CEO Tim Sullivan and Board Chair Kevin Quinn, will continue to look for ways to bring even more resources to our small business community as this emergency continues. I also thank Joe Kelly and his team in our front office economic development squad for their work in putting this program together. I mentioned this a few times now, the jobs portal created for New Jerseyans whose jobs were cut because of this emergency, but who still want to work and want to join our tremendous frontline response team by working at one of our essential employers, remains accessible through our one-stop site, covid19.nj.gov. The number of job postings on this site has grown at a pace that I don't think anyone could have expected. As of today, more than 35,000 job openings are being posted by more than 300 essential employers. 35,000 job openings across 300 employers. Since we put it online Monday, which is only a few days ago, the jobs portal has been accessed by 230,000 job seekers. So I urge every resident willing to step up to be a part of our frontline workforce to visit covid19.nj.gov to look at the list of available jobs and to apply for one. And I encourage essential employers to continue to connect with us through the site to have your openings posted. This shows the very best of New Jersey. We know from the response that tens of thousands of our residents want to keep working, in fact, hundreds of thousands, and want to be a part of our response, and that our business community is also stepping up in a big way. This is just one example of how we're going to get through this together and emerge stronger than ever before. Another example is by simply living our New Jersey values, even in this time of social distancing. I cannot say in any stronger possible terms how important it is that we pull through this together as one great, diverse New Jersey family. Our diversity is one of, if not our greatest source of strength. Our diversity of cultures and religions is one of our hallmarks as a state. We take enormous pride in that. So I take great offense, as do the overwhelming amount of our residents, when a small group of people do things like going on social media to scapegoat others.
So you've been listening to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy with an update on the virus situation in my home state here in New Jersey. So we'll continue to monitor his update as well as others and bring them to you. In the meantime, we do want to get back to what's going on in the market environment and what's impacting it. Still with us is our own Vince Signorella, Bloomberg News Global Macro Strategist, and we want to roll into the conversation. Peter Cheer, Head of Macro Strategy at Academy Securities. He's joining us on the phone from Connecticut. Vince, give us some idea of what you folks have been talking about on the Bloomberg Squawk Box. What are you hearing?
But it's really interesting to see the momentum and the enthusiasm in the market today. We spoke about this yesterday, and mea culpa. I think I said something like if we saw a 3 million number, the markets wouldn't like this. They liked it a lot, even though absolutely most traders think it's actually underreported. There was a lot of problems getting to reporting, especially on the websites, jobless claims. So next Thursday is probably going to look even uglier. But one trader said to me today, he goes, we priced the recession in mid-February, and now we're pricing the recovery. So markets seem to really be jumping way ahead of themselves. You spoke before Mr. Murphy came on about a roll-off today. It rolled off the highs a little bit. Momentum lost when Italy reported a big jump in cases. I think it was their lowest jump in 5 days. Right. And yet again, traders looking past that and telling me that's just higher because they're testing more. So the market seems to want to buy this today, and don't stand in front of it just yet. But I do believe certainly there is going to be worse to come, and there will be other opportunities to get in if you didn't get in today.
So, Peter Cheer, come on in here. Was reading your report from yesterday with great interest, talking about needing a bigger boat. I like the metaphor there. Help us understand sort of what that is and when we may need it.
So I think I look at it from two different perspectives. One is what the Fed is doing, and the Fed basically went all in over the weekend and on Monday morning, and I think the entire market now believes that the Fed will be responsive. I think when we look, though, at what is going through as the CARES Act, it's a little bit light in a few places, and I think ultimately, as soon as that gets passed, they're going to have to start talking about more CARES or a CARES Act 2 to fulfill some of the needs, and I think that's what the market's going to wind up needing.
Yeah, I do think what's interesting already, the conversation, Peter, is, phase 4 and phase 5. And when we get on the other side of this virus, we're still going to need, or companies and individuals are still going to need assistance on the other side of this.
Yeah, I think we need really two things. And one is to make sure that people can, make their payments and get paid and live their lives. But it's going to be crucial to the turnaround that things don't get bogged down in someone missing a rent payment and that involving lawyers or various other things. It's that aspect that will make the turnaround when it comes time to do it much slower. So I think there's a lot of progress that's still got to be made in that front in terms of how we're going to deal with missed payments, making sure people have enough so they don't have to miss those payments. That's going to be, I think, where the Congress and the Senate have to focus next.
Well, and quickly, something like that, if you're not making your mortgage payments or something, then it becomes more of a financial, potentially, crisis, right? If the banks aren't getting the money that they're counting on. And that's
this, to me, has really been what I'm calling a bottoms-up problem, where it starts with workers not being able to make their payments, which is very, very different than a financial crisis, which was largely a top-down problem. Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to take a different set of circumstances to address it. But I do think we've got some room for the upside in the markets in the near term. Given where equities are, given some optimism, and again, while the virus has been bad, there are signs maybe that we can beat this.
So, build on that thought, Vince Signorella, because what I hear Peter saying, and Carol and I have been talking about this a lot over the past few days, is the devil's in the details. Clearly, that was one of the things that was holding up this stimulus or rescue package from passing the Congress. From an investor's mindset, is the market overall less worried about the details and more concerned with sort of directionally what's happening?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Again, one key to me was there were problems in the credit markets, and we kind of saw this rolling problem where it started in high yield and emerging markets and moved to long-dated investment grade. And it was moving to that front end, and it was really kind of gumming up the system. Even commercial paper was struggling, which is the very front end, 1 year and less. When the Fed came in, it freed that up. So I think it took any sort of corporate liquidity crisis off the table. That's a big factor for, the markets. And I do think investors are being a little bit rational, and you see, okay, who's going to benefit from this? Who doesn't do well when this plays out? And some sectors, frankly, just are so oversold. If you look at it, the energy sector is doing okay today, despite the fact that oil is going down again.
Yeah, exactly. Vince, come on in. I know you wanted to say something as well.
I think Peter makes a great point, especially that bottom-up approach as opposed to the financial crisis. I think, that what everyone seems to be wanting to know for sure and hoping that the Washington doesn't move people back to work too soon is getting the health part of the equation right. If we get the health part of the equation right, we know we're going to have a poor second quarter. We know there's going to be some transition, potential recession if we get another poor third quarter. But the general feel of investors and the people I talk to on the street is fourth quarter should turn this around, especially with holiday spending. We should have a little zest in that. The first quarter of next year should be good as well. If you wanted to say pricing this with forward earnings, we're obviously looking past potentially 2 quarters at this point. It may be looking a little too past. We're definitely going to see some ugly numbers coming up. Both the unemployment numbers, Bullard said we could see 30%, which is amazing.
I would just add one other thing I think people are starting to talk about, and it's probably a bit premature, but what sort of true fiscal stimulus will we see once people are able to go back to work and socialize? And will we see a repatriation of some of the supply chains? And I think that is actually going to be an important factor. I think companies are going to reconsider what their supply chains look like, and maybe their supply chain should look a little bit like their customer base. And that could be a big boon to growth here in the third and fourth quarter and early next year.
But we do have to be concerned about how steep this drop is, right? Because people out of work, it's harder sometimes to get them back to work. And I do wonder about that, Peter. Just got about 30 seconds here.
Yes. Again, I think that's why Congress has to, and the Senate has to act aggressively and quickly. And I keep trying to remind people, Lehman was not a moment. Stock markets were up after Lehman. The stock market never recovered after the failed TARP vote. So I think it's important to get these things quick and pile them on top of each other to prevent that downfall, because I do agree that psychological impact of the downfall, once it's too long, is really hard to recover.
Yeah. All right. We're going to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Vince Signorella, global macro strategist for Bloomberg. Check that out on the terminal. Just go to your launch pad if you're on the Bloomberg and type Squawk. And Peter Cheer, always great to catch up with you as well. We really appreciate your insights. Head of macro strategy at Academy Securities, joining us on the phone from New Canaan, Connecticut. Coming up, Carol, we're going to shift over to the medical side of this, talk with one of our experts down at Johns Hopkins, get a sense of where this is going, because as we keep coming back to, and I know I'm a broken record on this is not one crisis. I mean, it is a medical crisis very much that is right in front of us here in the New York area. And obviously there's an economic element to that and a market element to that we've been talking about, but we cannot lose sight of the medical side of this.
And let's not forget the medical community. I mean, all around the globe is working on this, but there's still so many questions about this particular strain of virus and what's to come from it. So there's still a lot of questions. So looking forward to that. All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly from our respective homes. We do want to get a check on what's going on in the world of business and get an update on that rally today. Here is Charlie Pellet.
All right, I thank you very much, Carol Massar. Here's what's going on. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all pushing higher, close to highs of the day. with the S&P up now by 106 points. That is a gain of 4.3%. S&P at 2582. We've got the Dow up 930 points. That is a gain of 4.4%. NASDAQ up 283 points, up now by 3.8%. Stocks are rallying as investors speculate that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. S&P 500 on track for its first three-day rally since February. Stay with Bloomberg Business Week right through the closing bell and, of course, beyond, and also Asian markets tonight, but see how things shake out at the bell. Again, recapping here, stocks higher, S&P up 110, up 4.5%, 10-year up 23.30 seconds, the yield there 0.79%, gold up 0.8%, crude oil plunging, West Texas Intermediate down 7.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, let's get into the medical side of this. Lucky for us, we have a great relationship with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. You may know why. The Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Mike Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Dr. Arturo Casadevall is the chair of the Department of the Molecular Microbiology and Immunology group there. He joins us on the phone from Baltimore. Dr. Casadevall, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so help us understand what we've learned medically about this, and specifically, I know you're leading an effort around antibodies from recovered patients. Help us understand what you're learning.
So we are trying to get in place an old therapy, something that's been around for over 100 years, which is that you can take the antibodies from people who recover and use them to treat or prevent disease in people who are susceptible. And these antibodies are transferred by plasma. So what you do is you get people who recover to donate plasma. You test the plasma for antibodies, and then you use that plasma on people who need it.
So how easily is it to do? I mean, obviously it was easy, we'd have it done. But talk to us about how easy in this current situation where we've got a health system that's being stressed, just trying to take care of the increasing number of patients, especially in some of those hard-hit cities, be it New York, be it on the West Coast and elsewhere around the world. So
from a point of view of logistics, this is something that the medical system knows how to do. The Food and Drug Administration provided permission yesterday for its compassionate use. It is going to put a tax on resources, but on the other hand, if you were to use it and, for example, prevent people from going into the intensive care unit because they responded to the antibody therapy, it could help alleviate some of the problems that are going on in the current system.
And so help us understand the timeline, both of how it works and how soon we may see it. So if a patient is able to get this therapy, how soon do you see them respond if they respond positively?
Well, that will depend. That will depend on the different infectious diseases. We don't know with coronavirus. So what I would say about this therapy is that it has a high likelihood of success based on history, but that we won't know till it works because we're dealing with a new disease.
Right.
So but yet it may be the only thing that we have immediately available. And as to the logistics, the complicated thing is you got to locate people who are willing, and I will tell you that many people will be happy to donate. You need to bring them to a place in which they can donate the plasma. It needs to be tested for antibodies, and then that unit of plasma can be used on patients in the hospital.
So randomized control trials are the next step. So how do we get that going? Is it already going?
Well, no, compassionate use is getting going in New York City. And I understand that there are recruitment efforts in some of the medical centers. And I assume that compassionate use will begin in a few days. The randomized controlled trials are critical to know the efficacy of this. You really want to know whether this works. You want to know how to use it. You want to know when to use it. And we have applied to the FDA for permission to do clinical trials, and we're working with the FDA. And once we get permission from them, I think the next step is to actually set it up. But given the large numbers of patients in the hospitals and given the emergency that we're in, it's possible that we could get information on efficacy in a very short time. What do I mean by a short time? A few weeks, rather than your typical clinical trial that goes on for months and years.
And so one sort of very specific question, if someone donates plasma, Dr. Casadeval, how many patients can be essentially treated with that one patient's plasma or antibodies?
It's an excellent question, and it depends how you use it. I think at a minimum it's going to be 1-to-1. That is, one person donates and gives it. But we have estimates that depending on the antibody available, you may be able to treat 2 patients from one. However, if you were to break it down into and use it for prophylaxis, that is, if you were to use it for preventing disease, you may need much smaller amounts.
Right.
And this is something that will have to be worked out. But the important thing about an antibody is that antibody always works best when given early.
Right.
So we don't really know how well it's going to work on a compassionate use because inevitably those are very sick patients. But I think that the regulatory agencies have decided that, this may have a chance of working and is relatively safe, therefore compassionate use is appropriate.
Dr. Casadeval, I am curious because I do feel like we're all, the medical community in particular, Johns Hopkins, going after a lot of different things to try and figure this out as fast as possible. How do you as a medical community organize so that we're spending the time on the things that we should be to try and get this under control, get the virus under control?
Well, people are working very hard, and I think that we're trying to communicate and we're trying to figure out what other people are doing. And clearly in hospitals, there is coordination. The hospital administration and hospital institutional review boards know what's happening. So I think that even though things have been done in the middle of a pandemic, I think things are a lot more organized than one might think. And I would point out to you that we have gone from talking about this to getting FDA approval for compassionate use in a matter of weeks. I mean, I think that gives you a sense of how rapid this organization is able to deliver in some ways something that in ordinary times would have been very difficult to do.
Well, we wish you only the best of luck, and this is incredibly important work. We're very grateful that you took some time to tell us about it. Dr. Arturo Casadeval is the chair of the Department of the Molecular Microbiology and Immunology at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Of course, that is supported by Mike Bloomberg, founder Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Wow. I hope this works.
Yeah, right? It just sounds so logical. All right, so good stuff to know. All right, let's get a check on world and national news headlines. Let's toss things over to Bob Moon. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. Jason, good day. The bill to subsidize companies and workers during the coronavirus crisis is heading for final passage in the House of Representatives tomorrow. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
Republicans will back the bill as their leader Kevin McCarthy complains that the Democrats held it up needlessly.
What Democrats did was a total disgrace to change the direction and the vision of this country based upon their philosophical beliefs. We are going to have the opportunity to read the bill. We've been keeping our members abreast of where the bill's at. We'll have debate, and then we'll have a voice vote.
McCarthy said it's premature to discuss a further stimulus bill until Congress sees how the bills already passed work out. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
The House Speaker, by the way, begs to differ that the insistence of Democrats do their own due diligence on the biggest rescue package in U.S. history was somehow a delay. Nancy Pelosi spoke in an interview heard live on Bloomberg Radio and television.
We actually should have been doing this over a much longer period of time where we'd have more transparency and the public could be more aware of the provisions in the bill. So this was a very accelerated pace as it was.
Still, Pelosi told Bloomberg's David Weston that there will be strong bipartisan passage of the bill tomorrow. Officials in the nation's capital lashed out today at the $2.2 trillion coronavirus economic relief package moving through Congress, saying it cheats Washington, D.C. of more than $700 million by treating it as a territory rather than a state. Mayor Muriel Bowser labeled that shocking, infuriating, wrong, and outrageous. Global News 24 hours a day. I'm Bob Moon.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at Babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Are you interested in it?
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we're taking a deep look at the way the coronavirus pandemic has rippled through every aspect of our lives, seemingly in a matter of days and weeks. Whether you're working from home, not working, or have to go to work, COVID-19 has changed everything. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. S&P 500 Index on track for its first three-day rally since February. Health stocks and utilities are leading the way. S&P up now by 114 points. That is a gain of 4.6%. The Dow up 991 points, up 4.7%. And NASDAQ is up 295 points, higher by 4%. 10 years up 25-30 seconds, yield now 0.78%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, by the way, momentarily climbed 20% above its March 23rd trough. Gold higher by 0.8%, 16.30 the ounce. Crude oil, West Texas Intermediate, major story today, plunging 7.2%, 22.72 for a barrel of WTI, down by $1.77. So again, recapping here, S&P pushing higher by 11 points. The Dow up now by 1,008 points, and NASDAQ up by 294 for the S&P. That is a gain of 4.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser here with you on a busy Thursday afternoon, just sort of catching my breath here, Carol, because
a lot going on.
It's been fast-moving, to say the least, and we know it's been fast-moving for the magazine. Some really interesting coverage around Boeing, and we want to get into that with Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week. He's on the phone from Brooklyn, and Jim Ellis, assistant managing editor, for Bloomberg Business Week. He's on the phone from the great state of New Jersey. Joel, I want to start with you. Set this up for us, because this is a classic Business Week story in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's been a ton of just interest in sort of what's happening on the bailout front, and a company like Boeing is an especially interesting one because they're one of two companies in the world that basically makes all the planes that we used to fly on. And as everyone knows, that was a company that also became embroiled in a major catastrophe and was under the gun for a lot of that. And then lo and behold, here comes the coronavirus and is totally throwing a wrench in all of it. So, of course, they've raised their hand as part of this bailout process. It's $60 billion was the number that kind of came out. But they're not alone in terms of just being one of many actors that are suddenly, raising their hands and asking for government aid. And that was sort of where Jim Ellis came in on this. And we did a sort of a big takeout in the business section, looking at all the ways that the bailout moment is here. And also that there's some resistance to giving bailouts to companies like Boeing. Jim, what did we learn?
Well, I think one of the things that was so interesting about taking a look at Boeing is that there's not a lot of question that this is a business that has been slammed by the virus. I mean, obviously, this is a business that supplies airlines. Airlines, they depend on people to fly. People are not flying, and so basically they can't buy planes, and so a company that sells planes is in a bad way. Now, the issue though is, if there's this honeypot that Washington has to give out, should they be giving it to certain types of companies? And should they be giving it to companies with all sorts of strings? And should they be giving it to companies that a lot of people consider to be, I don't want to use the word bad actors, but at least people who have not, often behaved in ways that a lot of people in Washington have agreed with. And so Boeing became this very interesting thing to look at for a number of reasons. First, they have, in the past decade, they've done about $44 billion in stock buybacks. Now, a lot of people say that has basically given money back to investors. It didn't really sort of build the business per se on that. Now they've come up and said, "Oh God, this is happening now. We think that the aerospace business ought to have $60 billion in help." Now that's and so a lot of people are saying, why, if you've done in the past years, given back a lot of money that you should have maybe saved, and now you're coming to beg from us? Especially after the behavior that sort of came out in the 737 MAX investigations, that a lot of people thought that they were a little, that they were not as following the program as closely as possible, and that program, sort of went bad and led to over 300 deaths.
Well, what's interesting, Jim, is that I totally get this debate, but it's not just about Boeing. Boeing has a massive supply chain, and I do wonder when they're talking about we need a $60 billion bailout, how much goes for them, how much goes for others?
Well, that is a question that still hasn't been answered. The way this worked is that Boeing has said that that's what they think should go for the aerospace business. Well, let's face it, most of the aerospace business in the U.S. is based around, Boeing and to some extent some other defense contractors. But a lot of it would go to the people in the supply chain. But what's happening is that Boeing would probably be the people who sort of decide who gets the money. Now, they have, as they like to say, they've got 17,000 suppliers, and that the aerospace business supports about 2.5 million jobs in the U.S. That's a lot of jobs. Particularly, it's a lot of manufacturing jobs. So people want to, be right by them. But at the same time, people are saying, shouldn't there be more transparency about where that goes? I mean, currently, in what little we know about the real details of the package, so far, it looks like two ways that somebody like Boeing could be supported. Number one is through the direct support that the package gives to, indirectly they'll benefit from the airlines. There's going to be probably about $46 billion for the airlines, but there's this $17 billion set aside for companies that affect national security. Now, Boeing is the second largest defense contractor in the U.S., and it also is the only major company in the U.S. that can actually build a passenger jet. So in that sense, a lot of people are saying that looks to be almost a little earmark, for Boeing. We don't know that yet. We won't know it until probably the money starts heading out. Right. But in this sense, we understand that they're not going to be forgotten. Let's put it that way.
Well, and Joel, it does feel like one of the big questions as we go over the next few months and maybe even into 2021 is who gets what and who sort of gets to maybe not survive, but who gets to thrive in the aftermath of all this.
Yeah, I mean, the trough is like once there's this much money sloshing around, you can bet everybody's coming to the trough to take a turn. And, we're seeing it like cruise ships, casinos. Right. The casino is one that I think Jim and I have talked about a little bit and that I just continue to be really interested in. One reason being, like, you think about Nevada's role in the current political climate, there's a lot of voters that work in the casino industry, which happens to be a gigantic source of employment for people. It's a huge service economy. So I think, the number of industries and companies, like, we've only really begun to see the beginning, frankly, of all the companies that will start to raise their hands in the weeks ahead.
Well, and it's interesting, too, guys, that this notion that, you think about the political donations. And, Joel, as you rightly point out, this is a presidential election year, ultimately. And we know the way politics work in Washington for sure. Jim Ellis, Assistant Managing Editor for Business Week, overseeing the business section. That Boeing story anchors the section in this week's issue. He joined us on the phone from New Jersey. And Joel Weber, the editor of the magazine, joined us on the phone from Brooklyn. Carol?
Jason, it's just these larger discussions that we're all having. I mean, what's the responsibility of a company? I mean, nobody could have anticipated this situation, but safe to say that Boeing has made some mistakes in terms of, where they got to the situation prior to the virus concerns and the impact it's having on them. At the same time, you can understand that, when it comes to making planes, it's Boeing, it's Airbus, but Russia and China are eagerly eyeing the global airline and airplane market. So, there's just none of these are black and white issues, unfortunately.
Watch this space for sure.
Yeah. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly on this. Yes, folks, it's Thursday. This is Bloomberg.
Have you ever thought, You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, for years, U.S. preppers have invested time and money getting ready to tackle imaginary doomsday scenarios. So
you can't make up a story anymore. It doesn't work. We've got coronavirus, and it's not hypothetical. It's actually happening.
Don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading where it often gets interesting. We've got stocks holding on to their gains. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, they are all pushing higher right now. Let's begin with the numbers. I'll tell you the why. First of all, the S&P 500 index up now by 119 points. That is a gain of just about 4.8%. We have got the NASDAQ Composite Index higher by 300 points for NASDAQ. That is an advance right now of just about 4.05%, while the Dow is up 1,020 points, higher now by 4.8%. So the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all pushing higher right now. We have got stocks jumping with stimulus close. Investors are speculating that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. Treasuries holding on to gains. The 10-year up 18.30 seconds. The yield right now 0.80%. Crude oil, West Texas Intermediate, plunging 7%, $22.78 a barrel, and gold is up 0.8% right now, higher by $12.56 the ounce at $16.29. Bloomberg Economics says the coronavirus has triggered a global recession, and for proof, look no further than the nearest bus stop. With more, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Bloomberg's economists pour over reams of data. Here's something that stands out about the pandemic's impact. The number of people using public transit, a proxy for economic activity, has collapsed. Data from Move It, which tracks transit worldwide, shows countries that went into lockdown first have seen passenger volume fall furthest, with Italy down nearly 90%. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Manufacturing giant Caterpillar has withdrawn its outlook for 2020, adding to evidence that the coronavirus crisis is disrupting American industrial activity. Caterpillar shares up today by 3.9%. After earnings, Micron up by 4.3%. Recapping, stocks higher, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing right now, holding on to gains with the S&P up 115 points. That's a gain of 4.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly. Time to get a check of the day's economic news because, man, we had a whopper, and also take a look at the bond market. Kathleen Hayes is with us, Global Economics and Policy Editor at Bloomberg News, joining us on the phone from Pennsylvania. Also with us is Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist at Bloomberg Economics, on the phone from New Jersey. And I got to start with you, Carl. That economic news, we knew the weekly jobless were going to be rough, but still to see that number, that 3 million plus number, was a shocker.
It was a shocker to be sure, Carol, and then to see S&P futures up 116 points as I look at my Bloomberg terminal is an even bigger shocker. So it tells us that the stimulus measure that now looks like it's ready to go across the finish line is really going to have a powerful impact on the economy when complemented with everything that the Fed has done. And Jay Powell this morning on the Today Show saying that the Fed is far from running out of ammunition. They've got plenty of additional tricks up their sleeve, so to speak, including ramping up the size of existing programs. So really, policymakers here having a very forceful effect on trying to turn the economy around. Not soon enough to avert a lousy Q2, which today's jobless claims were a little bit of a prelude to that, but it should mean that we can return to growth in the back half of the year.
All right, Carl, I'm glad you mentioned that interview with Savannah Guthrie this morning on the Today Show with Chair Powell. Let's listen to some of what he had to say.
We're not going to run out of ammunition. That doesn't happen. We set the interest rates in time at what we think is the right, giving the economy the right level of support. if we had raised interest rates more, it would have been higher than we thought, and economic growth would have been a little bit slower. So it wouldn't have mattered in the end. So we really are always setting our interest rates at the level we think is appropriate.
All right, Kathleen Hayes, come on in here. What did you hear from Chair Powell, and what's the general mood coming out of this morning and everything that's been going on?
Well, first of all, reassurance. Yes, and I think, I just think this is so great because so many people in the markets, the Fed's running out of ammo. And a lot of economists, a lot of ex-Fed officials worry about running out of ammo. But what you're seeing in the bond market today, I think, belies that. But first of all, I think the Fed chair was calm, clear. He wanted to speak directly to the American people. That's why he was on the Today Show. So, hats off to him.
It was brilliant, Kathleen. It was brilliant, wasn't it? I thought we knew that weekly jobless number was going to be a shocker. We all knew what the headlines were, but it was brilliant.
Good timing, because, you say it was a shocker. I don't know what could have shocked me on the jobless claim, quite frankly, you guys. We know people have been laid off in droves, not only because many businesses don't have revenue, especially small and medium-sized ones, so they can't keep on our payrolls. But logically, if you want someone to be able to collect their unemployment benefits that they're entitled to, the sooner you lay them off, the sooner they can, get in that line. So I think that is maybe part of the strategy there for companies. Beyond that, I just want to point out, though, if we have a couple of great stories. One of them talking about all the corporate bond deals in the last 24 hours between the U.S. and Europe. 40 new deals. It's the best day in ages. Rich Miller on our eco team writing a story that starts, call it helicopter credit. $454 billion in the stimulus package. Carl touched on this. Can be leveraged now to provide $4 trillion worth of liquidity. Everybody who said on the day when the Fed has done one of these big steps, stocks sold off. It doesn't work. Maybe they have to realize these things do work. They may not happen in a minute. They may not happen in 24 hours. But I think we're starting to see that impact, certainly in this pickup in credit.
And this is really important, Carl, because, we've got to make sure that these companies are going to survive on the other side because they're the folks that eventually are going to be hiring again.
Absolutely. So the Fed, has really taken dramatic measures here, as Kathleen highlighted, and it's not really stimulus measures, right? What the Fed is doing now is keeping the lights on in the banking sector, and so they took massive action to stabilize the Treasury market. I mean, they did as much in a few weeks as they did in prior rounds of QE. So these are just stunning amounts of intervention into the markets. But the Fed has gone well beyond just keeping the lights on at Treasury. They have extended way out into credit disintermediation, whether it's for investment-grade corporates, commercial paper, municipalities, et cetera, et cetera. So the Fed has become not just a powerful central bank here. It's taking on a significant commercial bank role at a time when much of Wall Street was hunkering down and trying to freeze up.
So speaking of powerful banks, Kathleen, you look at banks all across the world and are part of the Bloomberg Daybreak Asia team. Help us understand what the rest of the world is doing at this point as we rightly focus a lot on Jay Powell and friends.
Well, certainly the Reserve Bank of Australia has been doing, and I still have to repeat, Phil Lowe, who, was in the past, didn't want to do QE, was hoping he wouldn't have to. They have been stepping up, adding all kinds of liquidity. This is a big step for them. We know that the People's Bank of China is expected to perhaps take further steps as their economy is, forecast to contract in the first quarter and possibly in the second quarter as well. If you listen to Leland Miller over at the China Beige Book, Singapore just reported a 10% drop in GDP. You could go on and on with the numbers. It's what's interesting to me, this coronavirus spares nobody, just about, right? Yeah. Not every nation has gotten it. But once you get it, so many of the same problems, so many of the same steps. Central banks are aggressive. Governments are aggressive with spending. India's in a tough spot. They don't have a lot of money to spend. There are countries like that as well. But I think Asia's going through a lot what we're going through too.
Kathleen makes an excellent point here. It kind of hits everyone equally, and the proof in the pudding for what you did to resolve the crisis will really be told in the back half of this year. Now we see the Fed moving much more aggressively than the ECB, for instance, and also the fiscal response more aggressive than what we're seeing in Europe. So I think we'll really see a differentiation in the pack in the back half of the year, depending on how forceful the policy response was.
That's such a fascinating point, too, because we and many people have leveled a lot of criticism at the medical response. But the fiscal and the monetary, may end up actually being something where the U.S. is an outlier in a positive way. Team, thank you so much. Kathleen Hayes, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg on the phone in NYC. Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist on the phone from New Jersey.
This is one of those things where, unfortunately, you got to take care of it all at the same time.
Yeah.
We have to take care of the healthcare crisis. You've got to think about what's going on in the financial markets. Most importantly, you have to think about, too, what's going on in the economy. And it needs to be globally taken care of. Otherwise, there's going to be, kind of a dysfunction when we come back. All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines. Back over to Mr. Bob Moon. Hi, Bob.
Carol, President Trump is proposing a risk classification system for the country to help businesses return to normal as the nation's death toll from the coronavirus exceeds 1,000. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell vowed to support the flow of credit in the U.S. economy after the Senate passed a $2 trillion package. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is already talking about strong bipartisan approval. Send the bill to President Trump for action tomorrow. And in an interview heard live here on Bloomberg Radio, she was already looking beyond that rescue package to further legislation to provide economic stimulus.
Our next bills will lean toward recovery, how we can create good-paying jobs as we go forward, perhaps building the infrastructure of America. All of these things are being done in a bipartisan way, but we do have to weigh in to make sure the leverage is more equal rather than favoring trickle-down rather than bubble-up.
According to the tally from Johns Hopkins, globally cases top 510,000 with 22,000 dead. And in the U.S., the death toll has topped 1,000. That's not just a number. You might not know his name, but Mark Blum's face could be very familiar from shows including Succession.
So many memories. I should write a book. I could. I've got the diaries.
To movies including Crocodile Dundee, Mark Blum was a veteran star of stage and screen. He died in New York due to complications from coronavirus. He played Madonna's love interest in Desperately Seeking Susan, had roles on NYPD Blue, The Sopranos, and The West Wing. He also co-starred in the recent Netflix hit You. Global News 24 hours a day. I'm Bob Moon.
Europe, stability, and constant evolution. Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Your job is going to be even more important, I'd argue.
Experience with consistent information.
Would it be a policy mistake if global central banks signaled a more dovish stance?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
So how do you tackle that? What's your mechanism?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/our stories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Coronavirus is affecting us all.
During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matches.
And all over, Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we're taking a deep look at the way the coronavirus pandemic has rippled through every aspect of our lives, seemingly in a matter of days and weeks. Whether you're working from home, not working, or have to go to work, COVID-19 has changed everything. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at Babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. They're all rallying off our session highs, but an up day nonetheless with the S&P this Thursday up 103 points now, up 4.2% at 2579. Dow Industrials up 817 points, higher by 3.9%, and NASDAQ is up 267 points. That is a gain of 3.6%. Bottom line, stocks rallying as investors speculate that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. S&P 500 index, by the way, on track for its first three-day rally since February. 10-year up 15.30 the yield now 0.81%. Gold is up 0.3%, 16.21 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude now down 6.4%, 22.93 for a barrel of WTI, lower today by $1.56 a barrel. So again, recapping here, rally underway. 42 minutes to go ahead of the close. Will it stay with Bloomberg for the latest? S&P up now by 106 points, a gain of 4.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, much appreciated. Charlie Pellet keeping us up to date on what's going on in the world of business. Let's get an update on what's going on in Washington, because we are awaiting that massive $2 trillion virus rescue package to go through, waiting on the House to vote on it. Steve Dennis is Senate reporter at Bloomberg News on the phone from Washington. So, Steve, where are we in this process?
Yeah, basically, we're waiting for the House to come back tomorrow morning. Speaker Pelosi says one way or another they're going to pass this thing tomorrow. It looks like they're going to try to do a voice vote, since there will be members there to object to just unanimous consent.
Can I just say, why is it taking so long?
That is a very good question. The thing is that the rules in Congress are not designed for speed. When you want to go really fast, you basically need unanimous consent in both chambers to go super duper fast. And, in the Senate, it just takes one senator to say, hey, I don't like this piece or I don't like that piece. And they can delay things for days and days and days. The House is a little bit faster, but, we have this unique situation where members don't want to be there. A lot of members are in quarantine or coming from states like New York, where other folks are not wanting to be around those members. So we'll see what ends up happening tomorrow. I think it's almost a certainty that this thing comes out of the House tomorrow. And if not, if one or two members insists on a roll call vote, certainly by the end of the weekend, this thing will be heading to the president's desk. It's not really a question of if, it's more a question of when.
Right. So I got to ask you, you mentioned, a senator can object to this or object to that and quibble with this or that. And we certainly saw some of that yesterday. Remind us what happened there and ultimately what was the sticking point? And I'm thinking specifically around this sort of showdown that included Bernie Sanders, the presidential candidate, and Lindsey Graham.
Sure. So the unemployment benefit piece of this became a late sticking point. You had a handful of Republican senators holding up or threatening to hold up the bill because everybody who gets unemployment insurance in the next couple months because of the coronavirus, you have this huge wave of unemployment. Everybody would get an additional $600 a week under this plan. So that's on top of your normal benefits. So if your normal benefit's a few $100s a week, you get $600 a week on top of that. So you had a handful of these senators suddenly say, even though the bill had been out there for days, they've said yesterday, hey, this looks like a drafting error. Low-wage workers will get paid more on unemployment than they were making in their jobs. And so they say this is an incentive to basically get laid off and stay laid off for 4 months. And the Democrats were like, look, this was worked out days ago. The Trump administration said if we tried to tweak it the way you guys want to, it would take 8 months for all these state computer systems to be updated. It just wouldn't work. And that's what we were hearing from the Trump administration, from people like Secretary Mnuchin is, look, this is not going to be a big problem for the economy. We need to move fast.
Well, right. I mean, we're going to realize that there's going to be probably those folks who take advantage of this program at all. But, at this point, it's about getting something out there as quickly as possible to help individuals who don't have those safety nets, small business who don't have those safety nets, and just make sure that somehow we're going to have, an economy to come back to.
Well, another point that was being made by the Democrats last night is, in the next 3 or 4 months, people who, for starters, if you quit your job, you don't qualify for these benefits. You have to actually be laid off. Second, if you've been laid off from these jobs, we have an economy that we've sort of are trying in many ways to slow down. We don't necessarily want all sorts of workers to be desperately out there in public searching for all these jobs.
Right.
So you kind of want to pay people to stay home. And then you have these low-wage workers, as far as like helping the economy. If somebody was making minimum wage before and now they're stuck at home, if you give them a few extra $100, those folks are going to be spending that money. So that was another point that the Democrats were making last night.
Right. All right. Well, it's a really good state of play. We're so grateful to you. We know it has been fast and furious for sure, Carol.
So, Steve, is it a morning vote? Is it by noon? What are we anticipated? What's the playbook on this tomorrow?
Yeah, so Pelosi, I think they come in at 9. Pelosi wants to be done by noon. They're going to have a few hours of debate if somebody wants to come to the floor and say what they liked or didn't like. But, any one member can demand a roll call vote, show up and be indignant about it, and then they'd have to call everybody back, or at least enough members to have a quorum. That would take at least hours before people could get here on airplanes and in cars and all the other things. I think the bigger question right now for businesses is how fast this money's getting out. That's what everybody's focused on right now, especially the small business money, $350 billion in free money the government's passing out initially with loans through banks, and eventually it's all becomes grants if you keep up your payroll. That money, that matters for millions and millions of small businesses out there.
And they want to get it.
That money get out the door.
Exactly. They want to get that as soon as possible. All right, Stephen Dennis, thank you so much. Center reporter, keeping an eye on everything down in the nation's capital. It's been a fast-moving story. Really, really good. I feel like I understand this better now, having talked to him. Really good stuff. All right, coming up, we're going to bring you Dave Wilson's chart of the day. Trying to understand this market. It ain't easy. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are sharply higher in the final hour as markets take a record surge in first-time jobless claims in stride. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 846, the S&P 500 up 110, the Nasdaq Composite up 285. Ford and Fiat Chrysler have issued plans to restart their U.S. factories, drawing sharp criticism from the UAW. The union says it has great concern about the plans as it confirmed the deaths of 2 more members from COVID-19. Citigroup reportedly will suspend any planned job cuts as part of its effort to support its workforce during the COVID-19 crisis. Morgan Stanley said earlier that it won't cut jobs this year. Oil fell sharply after the head of the International Energy Agency said global demand is in free fall due to COVID-19 and as major producers boost output. Crude finished at $22.60 a barrel, down $1.89. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you could keep the top?
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with little Rocky. Unfortunately, little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. save lives.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
On this week's On the Media, for years, U.S. preppers have invested time and money getting ready to tackle imaginary doomsday scenarios. So
you can't make up a story anymore. It doesn't work. We've got coronavirus, and it's not hypothetical. It's actually happening.
don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, coming up, Dave Wilson's got his chart of the day. I really rely on his market wisdom and context in these days, especially, this week where you look at the market and sort of go, wait, what? Okay. Here we are.
There's a lot of things going on, so Dave really figures out what we need to be paying attention to. So we're going to get his chart of the day in just a moment. And he's focusing on one particular name. But first up, back to your top business stories and a look at the trading day. Hey, Charlie Pellet.
Well, hello there, Carol Master. Here's what's going on. We've got 28 minutes to go ahead of the close here with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Close to the best level of the day right now. We'll see how things shake out. You got to stay with Bloomberg Business Week right through the close to see where we wind up. And, of course, Asian markets increasingly important to find out how they react to what's going on today on Wall Street. With the S&P up now by 128 points, up 5.2%. We've got the Dow up 1,046, up 4.9%. NASDAQ higher by 333 points. That is an advance right now of 4.5%. Stocks are rallying as investors speculate that the $2 trillion rescue package poised to pass Congress will blunt the pandemic's toll on the economy. Treasuries held gains. Dollar fell for a third day. The 10-year up 14.30 seconds at yield 0.81%. Gold up 0.5% right now, $16.24 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 6.5%, $22.90 a barrel. Some of the other stories that we're following for you today. Investment opportunities starting to present themselves in the markets. This according to Sergio Armati of UBS.
We do see people taking advantage of new opportunities. For example, this is time, in our point of view, to move into credits. If you look at historically from a risk-reward standpoint of view, not many times in the history where credit has been priced so attractively, and therefore we see people taking advantage of that.
U.S. Energy Department has withdrawn an offer to buy oil for the nation's strategic petroleum reserve due to uncertainty over funding from Congress. That's helping send oil lower today. West Texas Intermediate, again, down by 6.6%. Again, recapping. Stocks higher here, 27 minutes to go ahead of the close. We've got the S&P up now by 122 points. That is a gain of 5%. I'm okay. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business.
Are you? Because we were a little worried.
You really powered through that one, Charlie.
Yeah, I really appreciate you worrying, but I'm A-okay. I'm here right through the close and beyond because you know what? That is what we do at Bloomberg. We power on. Thank you, guys.
All right, go get a glass of water or some hot tea or something, Charlie. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
this somebody's little radio?
Is somebody playing this off their cell phone?
I don't know. It sure sounds like it does, doesn't it?
What is that?
Trust me, if you got the full sound, what you'd be hearing is Misery Loves Company by a guy named Mike Ness, best known for working with the band Social Distortion. And on that particular song, it's a duet. And if you know me, you know who else sang on it. Come on, folks. Absolutely. You got it. You betcha. So,
well, there was definitely some distortion there, but in any case,
not the social kind, unfortunately. In any case, it's all about misery in terms of companies losing their investment grade bond ratings. And I focused in on Moody's. Now, we know Moody's and S&P Global are the two credit rating services that people tend to pay the most attention to. Yesterday, Moody's put General Motors on a ratings watch, raising the possibility that their credit ratings will get cut. And they're already at the lowest possible investment grade level, so there's nowhere to go but to high yield, to junk bond status. And so I was trying to find a way in to sort of illustrate what's going on. I ran numbers in the Bloomberg terminal. They showed me 53 companies in the S&P 500 already have high-yield ratings. But then I went and looked a little further because in the terminal you can see which companies are, in a position where their credit ratings may go up or down. In essence, the ratings watch is on. And it turned out that 5 other companies since last week have been put in the same position that GM was put in yesterday. And it won't surprise you what industries we're talking about. Delta Airlines certainly have been hurting. Marriott International hotels have been hurting. Same with casinos, and you got Las Vegas Sands. And then you throw in what's gone on with oil prices. You got a couple of energy producers, Apache and Noble Energy. What really stands out, though, is the magnitude of the debt at GM as opposed to these other companies. You put it all together for the 6 of them, it's a little more than $121 billion of long-term debt. That's what it's on their books according to our numbers. GM is almost it's a little more than $66 billion of that, maybe closer to $67 billion. It goes to show you how big a deal that is. And indeed, if they do get cut to a junk bond level, there's only one other company at the moment at Moody's among the 20 biggest non-financial borrowers that has a high-yield rating. And it's one of GM's biggest competitors, Ford Motor, which, by the way, was also cut yesterday by S&P to a high-yield status. So, misery really does love company. And if you want to know more about this chart, send me an email. I'll get it to you with the explanation that goes with it and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
All right, Dave, just in 30 seconds or so, the S&P up 5%. Whoa, today. Crazy.
Yeah, it's more of the volatility we've been seeing, although in this case it's actually working up, not down. Given the extremes that we've seen in the past month or so moving lower, it's reasonable to figure that you'd see similar extremes moving higher. And when you talk about the U.S. government throwing $2 trillion at the economy, well, that sort of sets you up for extremes in financial markets, no question.
Hey, all right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. Dave Wilson, of course, he's going to come back a little bit later on with his stock of the day. But, it's the environment we're in, and these companies that are, in the situation facing the prospect of getting a downgrade is because they're either in those industries that are being most hit because of the virus and the downturn.
Well, and you've got you've got downgrades on one side, and then going back to the story in the magazine this week about Boeing, you've got potentially the government coming in to the tune of tens of billions of dollars for some industries, and it was reported earlier today that Secretary Mnuchin talking about the potential of taking stakes. It's really just, we keep saying this and the superlatives fail us, but this is uncharted in many ways. We just don't know what the right solutions are. But we'll see. we shall see.
And the problem is, and you and I talk about this a lot, Jason, is, when we get through this, we just don't know how long this is going to take, and we don't know what it's going to be like on the other side. So is it like the financial crisis, which took such a long time for everything to come back? The labor market, it took a decade to come back. It really took a long time for individuals. Some of them never came back when it came to the labor market. So I think that's hard. And I think when the government's trying to figure out policies, how steep do you get involved, right?
Right.
But I do think it's an emergency situation. I think you have to do everything to kind of shore up individuals, businesses, big and small.
Well, and speaking of emergency situations, we are going to hear from the Speaker of the House, her conversation, Nancy Pelosi's conversation, Speaker Pelosi's conversation with David Weston.
Right.
We're going to have some of that for you coming up in just a few minutes. On a day where the market clearly is reacting to that stimulus/rescue package and some optimism there. But again, I keep going back to this in the face of a huge public health crisis that doesn't seem to be abating just yet.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's get to World and National News headlines. We've got Bob Moon standing by. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. New Jersey's death toll from the coronavirus has nearly doubled in the last 2 days, rising to 81. That word today from Governor Phil Murphy, who says nearly 2,500 new cases were reported in the last 24 hours, bringing the total to nearly 6,900. Murphy pointed to the numbers to underscore the obvious.
Please continue to follow our stay-at-home directive. Please think of others across our state, let alone within your own family, whose lives that you depend on doing the smart thing.
President Trump signed a declaration naming New Jersey a disaster area eligible for additional funding. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says her members are ready to take up the bill to help bring the economy back in line tomorrow morning. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Are you interested in a challenging and
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
On this week's On the Media, for years, U.S. preppers have invested time and money getting ready to tackle imaginary doomsday scenarios. So
You can't make up a story anymore. It doesn't work. We've got coronavirus, and it's not hypothetical. It's actually happening.
Don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matchups.
It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. That's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all moving higher off their session highs, but an up Thursday nonetheless. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks trading higher again today with the Dow currently up 912 points. S&P's gain 111, while NASDAQ rises by 287. Small caps are up 35. 10-year yield at 0.82%. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Boeing, Walgreens, and Chevron, while Walmart fell. Nasdaq Biotechs jumped 3.7%. Semis rise 5%. This is lower by 3%. In other news, Micron rose as much as 7.7% after its earnings. And wrapping things up, KB Home, Lululemon, and SAIC all report after the bell. Live from the First Breaking News Desk.
All right, we much appreciate that, Bill Maloney, and to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg Type Squawk SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the Drive to the Close. Back with us is Ryan Dietrich. He's senior market strategist at LPL Financial, $764 billion in assets under management. Ryan joining us on the phone from Charlotte, North Carolina. So Ryan, Jason and I were just in the New York metro area. Tell me a little bit about Charlotte, North Carolina, how you're doing personally, your family, and just kind of what's the surroundings like?
Hey, Carol and Jason, thanks for having me back. Yeah, I mean, things are probably similar, right? It is a ghost town when you drive around. I mean, all of our neighbors just hunkering down. I go to the office sometimes, but for the most part, we are all just being very careful and staying to ourselves. And honestly, thanks for having me on this week and not last week, because there's a little bit of green to talk about. Some good news finally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to just staying with that for a second, Ryan. I am heartened, candidly, to hear you say that Charlotte, not that I want anybody to be locked down, but, you know, the sense that we are getting as we talk to people is that in different parts of the country, there's definitely a different vibe. I have a lot of family down in Atlanta, and they're, you know, presenting sort of a mixed picture from what we're seeing here in the New York metro area where people are completely locked down. And I do wonder for Charlotte, given its hardcore, you know, sort of attachment to the financial industry and knowing how much is going on here in New York, if maybe some of that is dictated there.
No, it is. I mean, you're right. I mean, like with LPL, we're a financial institution. We have to be open, right? I mean, people need access to their money. So it's a little different in our world. But again, most other people are pretty much locked down. And you know, my kids are outside just playing basketball a lot during the day. So honestly, I don't think they're really too affected by this. No school and basketball. They're doing okay.
Right.
So talk to us about some of your clients, and I'm assuming folks have been calling because, yep, it may be up today, but still we're down a lot for the year. So, Ryan, what is it that some of your clients are calling you about? What do they want to know?
Yeah, exactly, Carol. So, I mean, I've done conference calls every single day with our advisors, right? We got 17,000 advisors, and obviously they're all extremely concerned, but it's really awesome what not just our advisors, all advisors are doing for their clients during this incredible time of volatility. And the thing that we're saying is, hey, you know, as of we're speaking, guys, the S&P is up 15% the last 3 days. That's the greatest 3-day rally since April 1933. The flip side, of course, is we had one of the most vicious sell-offs we've ever seen heading into this. And our friends at Strategic Research did a note. They found 25 bear market rallies going back to the 60s. The average bounce, 15%. So, you know, we don't think by any means are we out of the woods. We do think there's some positives. We can get into that. But, you know, this is kind of where bounces tend to happen. And, you know, we might, before we know it, kind of be working our way back down as bottoms are a process, as everyone's been saying for a while now.
And so, you know, Ryan, you have such a great historical perspective on the market, as you just demonstrated. You know, as you look back and you try and understand this in the context of previous bear markets, previous downturns, previous real dislocations, how do you get your arms around it?
Yeah, it's tough to get our arms around it, right? Because this was the fastest bear market ever in only 16 days and the fastest 30% correction from all-time high to all-time low. So we've really never seen one quite like this. But let's compare it to 2008 for a second. You know, that was a financial crisis. The first people to lose their jobs then were who? Rich bankers on Wall Street, to be honest. Who's losing their jobs now? You know, it's the waitresses and a lot of people like that. So this is a business crisis that we have going on now. And another thing about 2008, we really didn't know what the the problem was until after the fact. All we knew was stocks were going down. We know what the problem is now, right? It's the coronavirus and the uncertainty that it causes. But look what happened today with the tragic, over 3 million jobs in initial claims. Well, now there's more certainty. We know we're in a recession. We know it's going to be rough. Market hates uncertainty. But now we can remove some of that uncertainty in the fact, okay, that's why stocks are up so much. The uncertainty to a degree was removed with the positives of the fiscal stimulus plan that's obviously inching closer to, being enacted here.
So again, in terms of strategy, how do you approach it at this point? Because as you say, finding a bottom is a process, so we may not be there yet.
Exactly, Carol. And like I said, we're not so sure. Think about 2008, with major lows in October, and then you made new lows 5 months later in March, a crash of 87, eventually didn't bottom officially until December. So December of 87, the way we're looking at this is we're using like a playbook, so to speak, a road to recovery playbook. And there's 5 things we're looking at. And I won't get into all the details, but we're starting to check a lot of those off. So what we're looking at doing is simply rebalancing a lot of our portfolios, right? Stocks have pulled back a lot. Bonds have been volatile also. So we're just thinking simply rebalancing is a great opportunity for your average longer-term investor. But also for longer-term investors, stocks did just pull back 34% on the S&P. The average pullback in a recession is 37%. And, so in that realm, I know we bounced off the last few days, but we really think now could be a time potentially to add. Could we have another 50% correction like we saw those previous 2 bear markets? Anything's possible. We really don't think that's the case. So with this very quick record monetary policy coupled with fiscal. So we're dipping our toe in, rebalancing some portfolios, and in a couple more months, we'll dip our toe in again, a dollar cost average. This is probably when we all look back in 10 years, we're going to remember where we were when we stayed home for a month, but hopefully investors didn't panic and they used it as an opportunity, really.
And so, Ryan,